Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Today we're hitting the long, lonely highways of Texas, the kind of roads where gas stations vanish, headlights appear without cars, and strangers watch from places they shouldn't be. These aren't your average road trip stories. These are 20 true Texas tales from travelers who found something far more disturbing than flat tires or bad motels. From silent trucks that follow without a driver to forgotten roads that never end, these stories will make you think twice before taking the back roads at night. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one big mistake. They leave without subscribing. And when they do, they miss out on the darkest, creepiest stories from places just like this. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now, because the road we're traveling tonight, it's only going to get darker. Where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because out here on the open road, nightfall never really ends. And neither does the horror. Now, let's hit the highway. Lucas didn't believe in the kinds of stories his grandfather used to tell him growing up. Stories about the desert swallowing people whole, about little towns where the clock stopped and no one ever left, about long stretches of Texas backroads that could lead you somewhere you weren't meant to be. Those stories felt like leftover scraps from a world that didn't exist anymore, the kind of thing old men made up to pass the time between beers. But after what happened just outside of Marfa, he's had a hard time sleeping, a hard time explaining things, a hard time trusting what's real. It started like every bad idea does, a shortcut. Jenna found it on some backwater message board while they were planning the trip. Matt, being Matt, thought it sounded perfect. Scenic, isolated, faster. The map showed a thin gray line cutting southwest through the desert scrub, no towns. No stops, just 60 miles of empty road reconnecting with I-10. They were driving west from San Antonio to El Paso, trying to make it in one long haul. Jenna said the road would shave off an hour. Matt said it'd be an adventure. Lucas didn't argue. The first 30 miles were normal enough. The pavement cracked but passable, the land flattening out into waves of dry, sunburned nothing. Mesquite. Trees leaned like old men toward the highway, and the heat shimmered off the hood of Matt's truck like ghost light. They saw a fence line here and there, a windmill or two tilting in the breeze like they wanted to fall over and get it done with. No houses, no animals. No other cars. It was Jenna who noticed the signs stopped showing up. No mileage markers. No county lines, no speed limits. Just that cracked ribbon of road unraveling ahead of them, and nothing but empty behind. At mile 40, the sun dipped low enough that the shadows stretched long across the road. The sky went the color of bruised fruit, all purple and red, and Lucas couldn't shake the feeling they'd slipped off the map somewhere back near mile 20. The GPS had gone blank. No service. The dashboard compass said they were heading southwest but felt unsure of itself, like the needle wanted to spin. Then they saw it. A gas station. Just one pump, rusted and leaning like it had a bad back. A squat, cinderblock building squatting behind it like a fat gray toad. The sign above. The door said gas in peeling red letters, the kind you'd see in an old movie. No brand, no hours. No price per gallon. Matt pulled in because of course he did. Said they might as well stretch their legs. Lucas wanted to keep driving. Jenna sat staring at the building like she'd seen it before. The air felt wrong the second. They opened the doors, still like a held breath. Too quiet even for the desert. No bugs, no wind. No nothing. Just the heat pressing down like a hand on the back of your neck. Inside, the place smelled like old paper and rust. The aisles were lined with shelves of canned goods so ancient the labels had curled off. There was a glass front fridge humming. In the corner, stocked with soda bottles covered in dust thick enough to write your name and no one behind the counter. No bell on the door. Matt called out a hello. His voice sounded small, swallowed by the cinder block walls. No answer. He shrugged and grabbed a soda from the fridge, popped the cap, took a swig. Lucas thought about telling him not to. Didn't. Too late. In the back of the store was a door. Metal, heavy looking, with scratches around the frame. Deep ones, like fingernails scrabbling for purchase. No sign. No handle, just a pull ring and a padlock hanging open like someone forgot to click it shut. Jenna said they should leave. Lucas agreed. Matt didn't listen. He pulled the padlock free, yanked the door open. A staircase led down into dark concrete walls dripping with moisture that shouldn't exist in the middle of the desert. The air that came up smelled like old. Water and iron and something faintly sweet, like rotted fruit. Lucas tried to joke. Said it probably led to a storm shelter or maybe some bootlegger's stash from the 30s. Matt grinned and started down. Jenna grabbed Lucas's arm, squeezed. Tight. Said again, leave. Now, but Lucas was tired of arguing. Tired of feeling like the cautious one. He followed Matt down. The stairs ended in a long hallway lit by bare bulbs strung along a wire, each one spaced too far apart so that the darkness pooled between them. The floor sloped subtly, drawing them deeper underground with each step. Doors lined the walls, numbered with faded brass plaques. 2A, 2B, 2C, all closed. All silent. Matt knocked on one. His knuckles echoed like someone tapping bone on bone. No answer. He tried the handle. Locked. Farther down, a door stood slightly ajar. No number. Just that same scratched metal, worn thin where hands had pushed against it again and again. Matt pushed it open. Inside, a room. Concrete. A single chair bolted to the floor, a drain beneath it. Chains bolted to the walls, hanging slack. A light bulb overhead, flickering. And painted on the far wall, something written in dripping red. Letters, too smeared to read. Lucas felt something shift in the air then, like the room was exhaling after holding its breath for too long. The walls seemed closer than they had a moment before. The light dimmed, buzzed louder. Jenna stood in the doorway, whispering no, no, no under her breath. That's when they heard a movement. Not footsteps. Not voices. Something dragging itself. Along the floor beyond the walls. Slow, heavy. Wet. Matt backed out fast, shoved the door shut. The sound stopped. They didn't speak on the way back up. Not even when they passed the clerk standing behind the counter, watching them with eyes. Too dark, too still. He hadn't been there before. His smile was wrong, wide and flat, stretching farther than it should. His name tag said nothing at all. Lucas thought they were running when they got outside. But looking back, their feet barely seemed to touch. The ground, the sun was gone. The sky above them black and silent. No stars. They didn't look back until they hit the main road again. The gas station wasn't there. Just empty scrubland and dust. Matt got sick 3 miles later. Jenna wouldn't speak until dawn. Lucas drove in silence, watching the shadows in the rear view, counting the miles like prayers. None of them talk about it now. Not really. Not what they saw. Not what they heard. Not about the fact that sometimes, in certain mirrors, Lucas still sees that door behind him, still open, still waiting. It was close to midnight when Mason pulled his truck off the I-35 somewhere, just outside of Waco. His stomach had been rumbling for the last 30 miles, but it wasn't hunger, not really. It was that sour, gassy churn that only came from too much coffee, too little sleep, and the creeping dread of knowing you still had another 3 hours of blacktop ahead of you. He pulled into the rest stop more out of necessity than choice. His bladder had been barking louder than his stomach. And this was the first set of lights he'd seen in 20 minutes. The place was empty. One of those old Department of Transportation stops concrete buildings shaped like a cinder block bunker. Coke machines with half the buttons missing. A vending machine promising sandwiches that looked older than the highway itself. A single row of sodium lights hissed in the humid air, casting their yellow sickness onto the lot. Mason parked beneath one out of habit. Not like anyone was going to steal from his truck out here, but still. He stepped out into heat that clung like wet laundry and walked stiff-legged toward the men's room. The door creaked like something out of a haunted house movie, and the smell inside hit him immediately. Piss, bleach, and something faint but unmistakably rotten beneath it all, like meat left too long in a plastic bag. There were 3 urinals, 2 stalls. A busted hand dryer hung on the wall like a broken jaw. Overhead, the lights buzzed in their grimed cages, one of them flickering with an irregular pulse, like a heartbeat that couldn't quite decide whether to quit. Mason picked the furthest urinal. It was habit again. Give yourself space when you can. The tiled wall in front of him was the color of old teeth, streaked with things better left unidentified. He unzipped, started to piss, and let his mind drift. He was thinking about the road ahead, about whether Liz would still be awake when he got home, whether she'd even care if he showed up at all. That's when he felt it, not heard. Not saw, felt eyes on him. He froze midstream, the hairs on his arms standing up like wires touched. To a live current, slowly, cautiously, Mason lifted his gaze. There, set high into the wall above the urinals, was a vent. Standard metal grate, no bigger than a shoebox. Behind it, darkness, but not empty darkness. 2 eyes stared back at him. Round, pale, too wide open, the whites almost glowing against whatever deep black crouched behind them. They didn't blink, didn't shift, didn't flinch when Mason met their gaze, just watched. He finished as quick as he could, zipped up with hands that weren't entirely steady, and took a step back. The eyes didn't follow him. They stayed fixed on the spot where he'd been standing, as if staring straight through the wall, through the floor, into something far deeper than the shitty bathroom. Mason thought about calling out, "Hey buddy, you all right up there?" But something in his gut locked the words down tight. Whatever was behind that grate wasn't waiting to be found. It had been watching long before Mason pulled off the highway. He turned fast, headed for the door, but as his hand touched the peeling metal push bar, a sound floated down. Behind him, a breath, long, slow, wet. He looked back, even though every nerve in him screamed not to. The eyes were still there. But now there was more. Fingers, thin, pale, curling through the slats of the vent. The nails long and yellowed, tapping soft and rhythmic against the metal, like someone practicing piano underwater. Tap, tap. Pause. Tap. Mason shoved the door open hard enough it slammed against the cinder block outside. He didn't run, he forced himself not to, but his strides ate the pavement quick enough. Back in the truck, doors locked, engine growling to life. He checked the mirrors, scanned the building, half expecting to see something crawl out after him. Nothing. But when he backed out, turned the truck toward the exit, his headlights swept over the bathroom's exterior wall. Something dark streaked. The vents now, leaking like thick black ink down the concrete. Not paint, not rust. Something fresher. Mason didn't stop again until he was back in city lights. He didn't tell Liz. He didn't tell anyone. What would he say? Some crackhead. Living in the ducks? A prank? His own sleep-deprived brain short-circuiting? But 3 nights later, wide awake at 2 a.m., Mason found himself back on Google Maps, scrolling that stretch of I-35 outside Waco, trying to pinpoint exactly where that rest stop had been. Only it wasn't there. No marker. No pin, no facility. Maintained by Texas. Note. He zoomed in, street view, everything. Where he remembered the turnoff, there was just empty scrubland. No building. No lights. No vents. But sometimes, late at night when he had to stop at other rest areas, Mason caught himself glancing at the ceilings, the walls, the dark corners overhead. Looking for vents. And sometimes, just sometimes, he thought he caught a pale glint watching him back. Not moving, just waiting. It was almost midnight when Clay and his younger brother Dean found themselves barreling down Highway 287 in Clay's old Chevy Silverado, headed north out of Vernon. Clay had been driving for hours, working his jaw on sunflower seeds and listening to whatever late-night radio they could pick up between the static. Dean rode shotgun, half asleep with his cap pulled low and his boots kicked up on the dash. They weren't in a hurry. No one drives through that part of Texas in a hurry. The land itself seems to bleed the urgency out of a man. Flat fields stretched out in every direction, pale and empty under the bone-colored light of a quarter moon. You could drive for miles without seeing so much as a porch light. Clay had just spit a shell into the coffee cup. Between them when he saw her, she was standing on the shoulder, maybe 10 feet from the white line. No shoes, no coat, just a thin dress hanging limp in the windless dark. Long black hair hid her face. For a second, Clay thought his eyes were playing tricks, fatigue mixing with the fog that clung low to the asphalt. But Dean sat up fast, his hat tumbling into the floorboard. "You saw that too, right?" Dean said, voice sharp now. Clay didn't answer. He was already letting off the gas, watching the figure vanish in the rearview as they passed. "What the hell's she doing? Out here?" Dean asked. No town for miles, no car, no shoes. Middle of the damn night. Clay pulled onto the shoulder, gravel popping under the tires. His hands felt cold on the wheel. "Turn around," he said. "We can't just leave her." Dean hesitated. "I don't know, man. That didn't feel right. What's she gonna do to us? She's barefoot." Looks half froze. Maybe her car broke down, or she got in a fight with some boyfriend and took off walking. Clay didn't believe it even as he said it. He threw the truck in reverse, backed up onto a gravel service road, and made a wide, slow turn until they were pointed back south. They didn't have to go far. Less than a minute down the road, she was there again. Not where they'd seen her before, ahead of them now, standing just where the headlight beams broke against the dark. Same black hair, same white dress, same bare feet. Clay mashed the brake. "No way," Dean whispered. She couldn't have moved that fast. Clay's voice was tight in his throat. "We'd have passed her." The woman didn't move, didn't even seem to breathe. Her arms hung loose at her sides. Head down, hair like wet rope hiding her face. Clay felt his skin prickle beneath his flannel shirt. Dean was already reaching across, fumbling for the lock. "Don't stop, Clay. Don't stop. Don't roll down the damn window either. She might need help." Then let her wave us down. Like a normal person. Dean's knuckles were white where they gripped the door handle. "Something's wrong here. I feel it. You don't see people like that unless you're about to see something worse." Clay put the truck in gear and eased past her slow, watching her out the window as they crept by. She didn't turn to look at them, didn't flinch. But as they passed, Clay thought he saw something, pale skin, maybe, peeking between the curtain of hair. A mouth that wasn't quite closed. Teeth too long, too sharp, like tiny splinters of bone wedged in black gums. Dean saw it too. "Go," he hissed. "Just go." Clay didn't argue this time. He pushed the speed up, watching the road ahead, watching the mirrors, waiting for something to happen. Waiting to see her again. She can't be ahead of us again. Clay muttered. No way. But 5 miles on, they saw her. Same place relative to the truck. Up ahead, shoulder of the road, caught in the lights like a spider in glass. Only this time she was closer to the white line. Closer to stepping out. Clay swerved wide to avoid her, tires skimming gravel, the truck rocking on its springs. Dean cursed under his breath and slapped the dashboard like that would help. This is a bad stretch, Dean said. You hear stories. Highway 287. Weird shit late at night. Ghosts, witches, devil dogs. Hell, I don't know. We shouldn't have stopped, shouldn't have turned back. Clay didn't answer. His stomach felt like ice. They drove faster. 40 became 60, 60 became 70. Fields blurred past. Fence posts ticking like clock hands out the corner of his eye. Town signs appeared and vanished. Herald, Electra, Iowa Park. Places that barely existed in daylight and didn't exist at all in the dark. The woman stood ahead again. This time. She was on the CENTERLINE. Clay saw her too late. Slammed the brakes and swerved into the oncoming lane, though there was no one else out here to hit. For one frozen heartbeat, she passed by his window so close he could have reached out and touched her. Her face lifted just enough for him to see what wasn't right beneath that curtain of hair. No eyes. Only black sockets leaking something thick and dark down her cheeks. The mouth split wider, impossibly wide, teeth like splinters ringing a pit of black. Dean screamed. Clay didn't know if he screamed too. The truck fishtailed, caught gravel, jerked them sideways. Clay fought the wheel, hard punching against his ribs. When they stopped, they were half in a ditch, headlights skewed up into nothing. Neither of them spoke for a long minute. Dean was crying, hands shaking where they gripped his knees. We need to get off this road, Clay nodded. He backed the truck onto the blacktop, slow, careful, headlights swinging side to side like searchlights. Nothing but empty road now. No woman. No anything. They drove with the doors locked and the windows up, faces pale in the dash lights, neither saying a word. Clay kept expecting her to appear in the headlights again. Expected to hear her breath behind him or see her reflection in the mirror. But she didn't come back. Not again. They made it to Wichita Falls and pulled into a truck stop drenched in neon, the lot full of idling semis and tired men in ball caps. They sat there a long time. Clay smoked 3 cigarettes back to back without tasting them. Dean wouldn't get out of the truck. They didn't talk about it that night. Not really, but years later. When Clay's boy was grown and asking why his old man wouldn't take Highway 287 after dark, Clay told him the story. Dean had stopped speaking to him by then. Moved out to Arizona. Clay heard he took to drinking, said he couldn't sleep right anymore. Said he kept seeing a woman in white standing by the road in the heat. Shimmer. Clay hadn't told him the part he'd kept for himself. The worst part. When they'd passed her that second time, close enough to see the sockets where her eyes should have been. Clay had caught something else in the rear view. Another figure far down the road. A man, maybe. Barefoot too, standing exactly the same way she had, hair hanging like wet seaweed over a ruined face. And beyond him, another. And another, lining the road like fence posts, waiting for the next fool to turn around. They first noticed it just outside Lubbock, somewhere past shallow water where the cotton fields give way to long stretches of nothing but dust and sky. A battered old Ford pickup, sunburned to hell, rust eating away at the edges like cancer on metal. It sat on the shoulder as they passed, crooked on its wheels like it had been left there decades ago. Jill didn't think much of it at first. Highways out here were littered with that kind of skeleton. Farm equipment abandoned, trucks cooked dry by sun and time. pickup shot full of holes by bored kids with beer and rifles. It was Mark who noticed it again 10 miles down the road. In the rearview mirror, right there behind them, same truck. Same patchwork rust bleeding through faded red paint. Same cracked windshield catching the last slant of daylight like a spider's web dipped in gold. "That's weird," he said, but didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Jill glanced back over her shoulder, and there it was, sitting a few lengths behind them like it had been the whole time. By the time they hit Littlefield, the truck had fallen back, vanished around a bend, only to reappear 20 miles later outside of Olton, closer now. Headlights on, though the sun hadn't fully set. Jill leaned against the window, watching it. Could just be someone heading the same way. Mark nodded, but his fingers tapped the wheel too fast. Yeah, could be. The miles stretched thin. Between towns, silence growing heavy. By the time they reached Plainview, dusk had settled over the plains in long purple bands. The truck was behind them again, closer. Close enough now that Jill could make out the dents in the hood. The way one headlight burned brighter than the other. The number smeared on the license plate like someone had tried to scratch it off with a knife. "Pull over," Jill said. "Let it pass." Mark did, easing their Honda onto the shoulder, hazard lights blinking into the coming dark. They waited. The truck rolled by, slow, deliberate. Jill leaned forward, trying to catch a glimpse through the dirty windshield, but there was no one behind the wheel. No silhouette. No movement. Just that empty, rotted cab gliding past like it knew exactly who they were. When Mark pulled back onto the road, the truck was gone. For a while, by Cress, it was ahead of them. Parked sideways across an old dirt access road like a dead cow stretched. Across a fence line, Mark didn't stop. He didn't even slow down. Just kept moving, hands tight on the wheel, knuckles pale. They didn't speak much after that. Jill kept her eyes on the passenger mirror, watching night swallow the horizon, watching for headlights that came and went without logic. Sometimes it was far behind, a faint pinprick hovering in the dark. Other times it appeared suddenly on the shoulder as they passed, its headlights flaring to life as if mocking them, daring them to turn around. By Tulia, they were both jumpy. Jill checked her phone for service. Nothing but a single, sickly bar bleeding in and out. Mark didn't bother with the radio anymore. The only thing on was static, like breath rattling through a throat full of water. They passed a state trooper outside Happy Parked, empty, lights off. Mark didn't slow. His eyes didn't leave the road. "You think it's following us?" Jill asked. Mark's mouth twitched like he wanted to say no, but couldn't force the word out. They didn't stop for gas in Canyon even though they needed it. Mark said he'd rather run dry in the middle of nowhere than stop under fluorescent lights where that truck might pull up beside them. Engine idling, driver's seat empty. They hit I-27 north, the wind picking up in ghostly howls across the flats. Amarillo was just a smear of light on the horizon now. The truck was behind them again, far enough back to be a threat without ever closing the distance. Jill wondered if it was playing with them like a cat with a bird that doesn't know it's already dead around them. The land flattened into black sheets broken by barbed wire and telephone poles leaning like old men in the wind. They passed an exit for a town that didn't seem to exist anymore, just a name on a sign. Nothing but darkness stretching away from it. The truck surged forward. Closer this time. Close enough that Jill thought she could hear the engine, a hollow, choking rattle like something running without oil. Mark drove faster. 80, 90, 100, still behind them. The wind screamed louder, like it wanted to warn them but couldn't find the words. The truck pulled into the passing lane beside. Then, slow, deliberate, keeping pace. Jill turned her head. The window on the driver's side was down, glass long gone, but the cab was empty. Not just empty, hollow. Nothing inside but darkness, deeper than the night around it. No seat, no wheel, no floor, just a hole cut in two. The shape of a truck dotted past them then, pulling ahead without effort, drifting back into their lane like it owned the road. Mark slammed the brakes. They skidded, fishtailed, righted. Ahead, the truck pulled away, gaining distance, its taillights winking out like dying stars when they reached the edge of Amarillo. The lights of the city seemed dull, distant, like something watched from the bottom of a well. Mark pulled into the first motel he saw, one of those cheap chain places where the neon buzzes like flies in your ear. They sat in the car a long time before either of them moved. Jill watched the highway behind them, waiting. Nothing came. Number. Headlights. No engine. Nothing. Mark checked them in, keys shaking in his hand. Room 118. First floor, facing the parking lot. They left the curtains open. Jill couldn't help it. She had to watch. Had to see if it would come. They sat on the edge of the bed, fully clothed, waiting for sleep that wouldn't come. At 2:17 a.m., headlights appeared at the far end of the Fay. The truck rolled in slow, parked directly outside their room, engine dead. Headlights off. No one got out. They didn't sleep. When dawn finally peeled itself over the edge of the earth, the truck was gone. So was their car. No tracks, no sign of it ever being there. Just an oil-black patch on the pavement where something heavy had waited. They had been on the road for 8 hours when the gas light came on. Travis figured they'd hit the next small town soon enough. They were somewhere east of Abilene, west of God knows what, chasing the long, straight blacktop beneath a sky the color of old metal. His girlfriend, Melissa, was asleep in the passenger seat with her hoodie pulled tight around her face like she was trying to vanish from the world. He didn't blame her. The last couple of days had been nothing but ugly silences and half-hearted apologies. A road trip was supposed to fix things, not make them worse. The gas light stayed on. 40 miles passed. No town. No lights on the horizon. No signs except the faded ones leaning crooked in the brush telling them about radio stations and cattle crossings and churches that likely hadn't had a sermon since Nixon. The phone had no bars. Travis turned the AC off to save gas. Melissa woke up shivering and said, "Where are we?" Like she was already halfway to angry again. I don't know. We're close to something. I saw a town back a ways on the map. He didn't tell her how far back. Another 5 minutes passed before they crested a rise and saw lights, neon, pink and blue, buzzing like flies caught in sugar water. A gas station, out here, in the middle of nothing. Melissa sat up straighter. Finally, she said, rubbing her face. It looked like any number of old gas stations he remembered from childhood trips. One of those squat, flat-roof buildings made of white brick that had yellowed with time. A Coke machine out front. A rack of dusty windshield wipers. 2 pumps standing lonesome beneath a rusted canopy. A sign overhead flickering weakly, GAS. And go. Travis pulled up and shut off the engine. The place seemed empty, not just quiet empty. No cars, no people. But the lights were on, and the pumps had digital readouts glowing green. He got out. The air smelled burned somehow, like old grease and something worse beneath it. Sweet and sick like rot. Inside, the bell over the door jangled. Melissa stayed. In the car, arms crossed, staring at her phone like she could force a signal to appear if she glared hard enough. The clerk stood behind the counter, leaning on one elbow, smoking a cigarette like the law didn't exist. He wore a name patch, Larry. His shirt said 76 gas. The radio behind him played something soft, country maybe, a song Travis half recognized from his dad's truck decades ago. "You're running her pretty lean, son," Larry said, blowing smoke up into the humming fluorescence. "They ain't wise out here. Gas runs out faster at night. Travis smiled because he didn't know what else to do. Yeah, just passing through. Headed east. Larry tapped ash into a ceramic mug. East'll eat you alive if you don't keep your tank full. His voice sounded slow and thick, like syrup poured over gravel. Okay. Travis let that hang between them, awkward as hell. Pump still work? Larry grinned around the cigarette. Far as I know. Been working since 73. That's when we got M new. Changed everything, Travis thought. 1973? Maybe the guy meant the last time they updated the sign or the pumps. Maybe he was just crazy. Out here, people probably talked weird just to pass the time. He paid cash. Larry gave him change and faded. Bills so soft they might have been handled 1,000 times too many. His fingers felt cool, dry as leaves. You take care out there now, Larry said. Road don't always bring you back. The bell jangled again when Travis left. Melissa didn't look up. The pump took his 20 and filled the tank slower than it should have, ticking up like an old analog meter even though it was digital. When he was done, he glanced back through the window. Larry watched him from the shadows behind the glass, not smiling now. They drove on. Melissa asked, "What was that place?" "Gas station." "No, I mean, felt weird." "Didn't it feel weird?" He didn't answer. The radio fuzzed between stations. Darkness pressed harder against the headlights. He kept looking in the mirror without knowing why. They hit the next town in under an hour. A bigger place. A place with a sheriff's office and a diner and cell service. Melissa went inside to pee and grab coffee. Travis stood at the pump, topping off even though he didn't need to. Habit. The sheriff was there too, leaning against his cruiser, talking to the attendant. Small town. Everyone knew everyone. The sheriff smiled at Travis, nodded. "Y'all just passing through?" "Yeah, got gas back up the road but figured I'd fill up again." The sheriff's smile twitched. "Where at?" "Gas and go. About 30 miles west, maybe 40. The sheriff's face changed then. Not scared, exactly. Not surprised. Something heavier. Like someone remembering bad news. "You sure about that?" "Yeah. Why?" The sheriff rubbed his jaw. "That place burned down in '88. Lightning hit the pumps. Blew the whole damn thing up. Clerk died. Fella named Larry. Used to smoke too much, they said. Body burned to bone. Ain't been nothing there since but rubble and rust. You can go look if you want." Melissa came back then with 2 coffees. Travis took his without thinking. The sheriff watched them drive off like he was waiting to see if they'd vanish. They did turn back. Curiosity, or maybe something worse pulling at them like fish on a line. They found the spot easy enough. Same mile marker. Same bend in the road. Nothing. Their dot just cracked concrete where pumps had stood. Blackened foundation swallowed by weeds. A sunken hole where the office must have been. Burned out, empty. Cold despite the heat. Melissa walked a little ways and picked something out of the dirt. Came back pale, holding it up between 2 fingers. A coin. Old, filthy. Melted maybe. 1973. They didn't talk much after that. Didn't stop again until morning. It started somewhere just past Wichita Falls, where the road starts to stretch too long and too flat, and the sky seems to widen out until you can't tell if you're still under it or if you've already been swallowed whole. They were heading west, trying to make Albuquerque by nightfall. 2 brothers and a woman caught somewhere in the middle of their lives. None of them talked much after the sun went down, not because of any real tension between them, but because some stretches of Texas highways seem to drain the words right out of a person. You drive long enough through those miles of dust and wire fence nothing, and you start feeling like the only thing alive for 100, Miles is whatever's hiding just out of your headlights. First time they saw him was at a gas station off some nameless two-lane that hooked south of the main interstate. The place was half-lit, buzzing neon trying to hold together against the night. They pulled up because they needed to piss and stretch their legs and figure out how many more hours they had in them. The woman, her name was Lynn, she went in. First, the brothers stayed back by the car. One smoked. One just leaned and watched the emptiness beyond the pumps like he expected it to blink. When Lynn came out, she mentioned him. Some old cowboy in there, she said. Big hat, big smile. Gave me the creeps. The brother who smoked chuckled. That's Texas, sweetheart. Big hats and bigger smiles. But when they went inside, no cowboy. Just a skinny kid behind. The register, watching something violent on his phone with the volume too low to hear. Nobody else. Still, Lynn swore it. He was there, by the door. Smiling, watching. They shrugged it off, got back in the car. Kept driving. Next stop was a diner a few towns later. One of those places where the menu hasn't changed since the Eisenhower administration and the pie looks fossilized behind the glass. They sat by the window because the night pressed close to the glass like it wanted to hear what they were saying. The waitress was old, smelled like menthols and Aqua Net. She poured coffee like she was punishing it. That's when the youngest brother, Jared, he noticed the cowboy. Don't look now, he said, leaning over his coffee like he was praying into it. But there's a guy outside, big hat, just standing there by the ice machine. They looked, slowly, careful not to spook whatever was out there. And sure enough, under the buzzing blue light, there he stood, tall, thin, cowboy hat pulled low, grinning like he'd just heard the punchline to a joke nobody else understood. He didn't move, didn't smoke, didn't blink. When they left, they walked fast. The cowboy watched them, watched as they got in the car, as they locked the doors, as they pulled out onto the road without checking the mirrors. Lynn's hand shook on the wheel. Jared didn't say another word for 2 whole exits. After that, it was like he started showing up everywhere. Rest stops, truck lots, parking lots outside motels too tired to pretend they weren't hourly. Always standing just far enough away that you could doubt yourself if you wanted. Maybe a trick of the light. Maybe a cutout some joker left standing in the dark. But Lynn knew. Jared knew. Even the older brother, Danny, who didn't spook easy, started sleeping with a tire iron under his seat. It wasn't just the hat or the smile. It was the way he looked at them. Like he already knew where they were going. Like he'd been waiting on them a long, long time. In Sweetwater, they stopped for gas again. This time Danny pumped while Jared went inside. Lynn stayed in the car. In the rear view, she saw him. Cowboy hat, grinning. This time standing in front of the ice chest like before, like he was part of the scenery. Only he wasn't watching the store. He was watching her. She locked the doors, rolled up the windows, told herself it wasn't real. But when Jared came out, his face was pale as milk. He talked to me. That's what Jared said. He said my name. Said it like he'd been practicing. They drove faster after that. Took back roads they didn't recognize just to shake the feeling of him. But every time they stopped, every time they looked too long into the corners of a place, there he'd be, watching, smiling, like he couldn't wait to see how the story ended. By the time they hit the New Mexico line, they were frayed at the edges, eyes red, nerves like pulled wire. Danny said enough was enough. We're stopping. We're sleeping. I don't give a damn if we have to pay double. They found a motel on the edge of nothing. Neon burned out to just OL. Room smelled of bleach and mildew and ghosts. But it was a bed. It was a door that locked. Jared refused to sleep alone. Danny didn't argue. Lynn took the room next to them and double-checked every latch twice. But sometime past midnight, She heard the knock, slow, deliberate, 3 taps like someone taking their time. She didn't move, didn't breathe. Then his voice through the door. "Lynn, you left your lights on." Soft, smiling. Patient as Sunday. She didn't answer, didn't make a sound. After a while, the footsteps moved on. In the morning, Jared's room was empty. Bed untouched. Door unlocked. Danny sat on the curb smoking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "Gone," he said. "Just gone. No sign, no nothing. Like he stepped out and never came back." They searched. Motel manager helped, reluctantly. Cops came. Asked questions that didn't make sense. Questions about drinking, about drugs, about mental health history. They didn't ask about the man in the cowboy hat. Not once. Danny wouldn't stay another night. They drove straight through to Albuquerque, silent as stone. Lynn watched every mirror, every shadow. Sometimes she thought she saw him smile, waiting just beyond the edge of the gaslight. Sometimes she thought she heard Jared's name, soft as a prayer. Months later, when they showed Lynn the photo in the paper missing persons out of Texas cold case, unsolved, they asked if she recognized the man. Tall, thin, cowboy hat. Been missing since '82. She smiled then, not because it was funny, not because she understood, because somewhere on the road, out there in the spaces between headlights and horizon, Jared was still standing, and the man in the cowboy hat was still smiling. It started just outside Corpus Christi, somewhere past the last of the gas stations and the tired little strip malls with their flickering neon signs. The night was thick with that swampy heat South Texas is known for, the kind of heat that soaks through your clothes and makes your skin itch. Jake was behind the wheel, his buddy Travis riding shotgun, and Melanie asleep in the back, curled up with her knees tucked against the door. They were heading back to Victoria after a long weekend of fishing and cheap beer and arguing about nothing in particular. The road ahead was empty, nothing but blacktop and the dark shapes of trees pressing in from either side. They first saw the man on the side of the road, about halfway between towns. He was standing right at the edge of the shoulder, still as a PL's fence post, facing the oncoming car like he'd been waiting for them. Tall, thin, dressed all in black. No bag, no sign, no thumb out asking for help. Just standing there. "Jesus," Travis said, sitting up straighter. "You see him?" "Yeah," Jake muttered. His foot came off the gas without him thinking. "About it." Melanie stirred in the back seat. What is it?" "Guy on the road." Jake slowed as they passed. Not much choice. The guy was right on the white line, and for a second Jake thought maybe he was drunk or sick or something. Worse. But as they got closer, the man took a single step back, just enough to let them by without having to swerve. His face was pale, blank. No expression. Eyes straight ahead. "Creepy bastard," Travis said, watching through the side mirror as the man disappeared into the dark behind them. "You think we should have stopped? Could be in trouble." Jake kept his eyes on the road. "Out here? Middle of nowhere? Hell no." Melanie yawned and lay back down. He didn't look like he wanted help. For a few minutes, they drove in silence, the hum of the tires and the buzz of the crickets outside filling up the car. The night seemed to grow heavier, the trees pressing closer, the sky darker even than before. It felt like something hanging over them, waiting. Then Travis sat up fast, twisting in his seat. "Hey, where the hell did he go?" Jake glanced in the mirror. Nothing but empty road stretching behind them. "I swear to God," Travis said. "He was walking behind us. I saw him in the mirror just a second ago. Now he's gone." Jake shook his head. "Relax, man." Probably just ducked into the trees. But Travis didn't answer. He was staring ahead now, mouth open a little. Jake followed his gaze. The headlights picked out a shape up ahead, maybe 50 yards down the road. A man, standing dead center in the lane. The hell? Jake breathed. Same man, same clothes, same blank face. Jake slowed, then stopped. They were alone out there. Nothing but them and this hitchhiker who wasn't thumbing a ride. Travis rolled down his window. "Hey, buddy, you okay?" The man said nothing. Up close, he looked wrong somehow. Not just pale, drained, hollow. His eyes were sunken deep, the skin around them shadowed and dry like paper. His hands hung limp at his sides. He didn't blink. "Okay, man, screw this," Jake said, his skin crawling now, a sharp pressure building at the base of his skull. He eased the car forward like he expected the man to move. He did. Without looking down, without breaking eye contact, the man stepped off the road and opened the back door. Melanie sat up fast, gasping, pulling herself away from him as he slid inside without a word and shut the door behind him. "What the hell?" "Just drive," Melanie whispered. Her voice sounded thin, shaking. "Just drive, Jake." And he did. For a while, nobody spoke. Travis kept glancing back, eyes wide. Melanie had her arms wrapped tight around herself, pressed up against the far door like she thought she could melt into it. Jake watched the road, but his hands were slick on the wheel, and his heart wouldn't settle. The man didn't say a word. Didn't look at them. Just sat there, staring straight ahead like he wasn't really in the car at all. Like he was somewhere. Far away, or maybe nowhere at all. "Where you headed?" Jake asked finally, his voice too loud in the close, hot air. "Nothing. You need help, man? Need us to drop you somewhere?" Still nothing. Travis turned back around, shaking his head slow. "I don't like this, Jake. I don't like this one goddamn bit." Ahead, the road bent toward a set of old train tracks that hadn't been used in years. Just rusted rails and cracked ties baking in the Texas sun, weeds grown up through the gravel. They were halfway across when the man moved. He opened the door. Not fast. Not like he was trying to jump or get away. Slow. Careful. Like he was stepping out onto a front porch. "Wait," Melanie said, reaching out instinctively, but he was. Already gone. Not out of the car. Not onto the tracks. Just gone. The door hung open, nothing beyond it, but empty night. Jake hit the brakes, the car rocking to a stop. He got out, heart pounding, headlights spilling long pale beams across the rails and into the brush beyond. No sign of him. Travis joined him, swearing under his breath. "You saw that, right?" "I didn't imagine that." "No," Jake said. "No, you didn't." They checked under the car, around it, up and down the tracks. Nothing. No footprints in the dirt. No sound except the wind stirring in the trees and the faint, distant whistle of a train that couldn't be there. Not on these dead rails. They got back in, shut the door, and drove. Nobody said much after that. When they finally reached Victoria, pulled into Travis's driveway with its sagging porch light and tired patch of grass, Melanie got out without a word. Jake followed. Travis stayed behind, staring at the empty back seat. "You think he?" Jake didn't answer. Later, much later, Melanie said she could still feel it sometimes. The weight of him sitting beside her. Cold air brushing against her skin even when the windows were up. Sometimes she dreamed about the tracks, about a figure walking alongside the car, just outside the light. And sometimes, when the night was thick and heavy and the road stretched empty ahead, Jake would glance in the rearview mirror and swear. Just for a second, he could see him sitting there, pale, silent, staring straight ahead, waiting for the next train that would never come. It started somewhere outside of Waco. Dean figured it was just a coincidence the first time. He and Tara had been on the road for hours, heading west toward Lubbock, trying to outrun the kind of life you only escape by packing what you can fit into a duffel bag and not leaving a note. He didn't think anything of it at first. White vans were everywhere. Delivery drivers, contractors, soccer dads hauling kids to practice. But this one didn't have plates. No lettering on the side, no rust spots, no bumper stickers, nothing to identify it. Just a plain, blank white van with dark, almost mirrored windows. It showed up in the rearview somewhere off Highway 6, a mile or so after they'd stopped for gas at one of those stations where the lights flickered and the bathrooms reeked of bleach and mold and things better left unnamed. Dean hadn't paid it any real mind. Not until 2 hours later, when he checked his mirrors and there it was again, maybe 3 car lengths back. Headlights steady, silent, following. Tara was asleep with her knees pulled up to her chest, face turned toward the window, earbuds in. He didn't wake her. Just kept driving, watching the van from the corners of his eyes. When he finally exited onto a smaller farm-to-market road, took a winding path that led them through Nowhere Town's meridian, Hico, towns that looked empty even when they weren't. He figured that would be that. Nobody with sense would follow them down these roads. He kept driving, the sky bleeding from pink to bruised purple, and for a while he thought he'd lost it. But a little before dusk, outside of Dublin, there it was again. Same van, same distance, same slow, steady pace. No headlights this time. Just following. He woke Tara then, nudging her shoulder until she pulled an earbud free and blinked herself halfway alert. "You see that?" he asked. "What?" "That. Van, behind us. The white one." Tara squinted into the side mirror, then turned to glance through the back window. "What about it? It's been following us for hours." "You sure it's the same one?" "No plates, no markings." "Same. Tint on the windows. Same spot behind us every time I look." Tara watched it for a moment longer. Could be someone just headed the same way. "That's a hell of a coincidence, don't you think?" Tara sat up straighter. "Try losing it. Turn off somewhere." Dean did. Took the next right down a narrow strip of blacktop lined with scrub brush and barbed wire fencing, old ranch land that seemed to stretch into forever. After a couple of miles, he pulled off onto a dirt road and killed the headlights. They sat in the dark, breathing quietly, waiting. No van? "See?" Tara said. Dean almost believed it. He started to turn the key when a pair of headlights flared to life in the mirror behind them, maybe 100 yards back. No engine noise. Just lights, cutting through the dusk like a warning. He started the car without another word and drove. Fast this time, dust trailing behind them like smoke. But, no matter how fast he went, the van kept pace, closing the gap inch by inch. When he pushed it to 70, the van did too. When he slowed to take a corner sharp enough to fishtail them into gravel, it stayed steady. Like it knew the road better than they did. Like it knew them better than they knew themselves. Tara had her phone out now, trying to pull up a signal. Nothing. No bars. No map. Just blank screens and buffering circles. "Maybe turn around," she said. "Go back toward town. Find people, find cops." Dean didn't argue. He threw a U-turn sloppy enough to lurch Tara against the door and headed back the way they came. They didn't get far. The van was waiting in the middle of the road ahead of them. No headlights this time. Just sitting there, blocking their path. Like it had been waiting for them to figure it out. Dean hit the brakes hard, tires skidding on loose gravel. For a moment they just sat there, the two vehicles facing each other in silence. Nothing moving but the heat rippling off the hood's dot then. The van's headlights blinked on again. High beams. Blinding. Dean threw the car into reverse, backing up blind, hard hammering. The van started forward, slow at first, creeping, then faster. Closing the space between them like it was pushing them backward, hurting them. "Stop," Tara yelled. cut through the fence. Dean didn't hesitate. He spun the wheel hard and drove straight through a gap in the barbed wire, metal scraping paint, thudding over uneven ground, dust boiling up around them. Behind them, the van followed, perfectly, effortlessly, like the terrain didn't matter, like physics didn't matter. They drove until the sun bled out entirely, and the only light came from the moon and the van and the dashboard glow. Miles. Out into nothing, no roads anymore, just raw Texas dirt and dying grass. And still the van stayed behind them, never falling back, never getting closer. Just there, Dean finally stopped. There wasn't any point in running anymore. The gas gauge hovered on empty. His hand shook on the wheel. What do we do now? Tara whispered. Dean didn't have an answer. They sat there, waiting for something to happen. For the van to pull alongside, for someone to get out, for any sign of life at all. But the doors never opened. The engine never idled. It just sat there, headlights boring into them, unwavering. An hour passed. 2. The moon moved across the core. Sky and Dean started to wonder if this was hell, if they'd driven themselves straight into some pocket of the world where things like this were allowed to happen, where people disappeared without ever leaving a trace. At some point, Tara fell asleep again, exhaustion overriding fear. Dean stayed awake, watching, waiting. In the darkest part of the night, when everything else seemed dead and silent, the van's lights shut off. For the first time, Dean could see the shape inside, not a person exactly, not a shadow either, something. Between the two, pressed up against the glass where a face should have been, watching, smiling, maybe. It was hard to tell. Dean didn't sleep, didn't move, just sat there, holding onto the wheel like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to reality. When the sun finally started to rise, the van was gone. No tracks leading away. No sign it had ever been there except the terror still clawing at Dean's chest. They made it to Lubbock by noon. Stayed in a motel with lights too bright and sheets too thin. Tara didn't talk much after that. Neither did Dean, but sometimes, late at night, when he checked the window out of habit, he thought he could still see it parked across the street. Headlights off. Engine silent. Waiting. Just waiting. Because some things you don't outrun. Some things follow you forever. There's a stretch of back road about 20 miles east of Nacogdoches where the pine trees grow too close to the crumbling blacktop, pressing inward like tall, silent sentries trying to reclaim it. You wouldn't find it on any decent map, and if you asked the locals, they'd shrug and say something vague about old logging routes and warn you the road loops back on itself if you aren't careful. People don't like to talk about what's back there. Not openly. Not unless they've had a few beers and the night's grown long and soft and mean. That's how Jake heard about it. A night too late for good decisions, sitting with his buddy. Carson in the bed of an old Ford 5 pickup, staring up at a sky the color of spilled ink. Carson's cousin had mentioned it, half joking, half daring, about some church rotting away out past the timberlines, a place where the congregation had packed up and vanished sometime in the late 60s. Left hymnals scattered across the floor, pews empty, pulpit gathering dust. Sighed sometimes hikers would come back claiming they heard footsteps behind them, voices under the floorboards. Standard ghost story fare. But Jake wasn't the kind to leave things alone once they got under his skin. The next afternoon, with the heat pressed down like a wet blanket and the sky humming with bugs, Jake convinced Carson to drive them out there. It wasn't hard. Carson had that same streak of bored recklessness running through him, that East Texas brand of dumb courage that gets people stuck in bar fights or run off the road at midnight. They brought along Carson's girl, Lena, because she hated to be left out, and she hated Jake a little too, which made things interesting in a way none of them said out loud. They found the church after about an hour of wandering down rutted paths that barely qualified as roads. The building sagged behind a collapsed fence and a tangle of trees that seemed to lean in just a little too eagerly, like they were waiting to swallow it whole. Peeling white paint curled away from the wooden siding like old skin. The steeple stood crooked, its iron bell long gone, leaving a gap that yawned open to the bruised sky. Jake pushed open the door. It gave way with a long groaning sigh, and the smell that spilled out wasn't just rot, though there was plenty of that, but something older, something dry and hollow, like air trapped underground too long. Inside, the light fell in dusty columns through broken windows. Pews sat in crooked rows, some splintered where trees had pushed through the walls. Hymnals lay scattered, their pages soft with mildew. The pulpit leaned as if exhausted. Behind it, a faded cross hung upside down, the nail holding it giving. Up decades ago. No footprints, Carson said. His voice sounded too loud. Ain't been nobody here in a long time. Jake nodded, but something itched at the back of his mind. Dust lay thick as snowfall across the floorboards, but there, near the altar, something had disturbed it. Drag marks, scuffing like someone had been pulled. Or crawled. They walked slow, kicking up little ghosts of dirt with every step. Lena stayed close behind Jake, not saying much, arms wrapped tight across her chest. Her eyes kept sliding to the shadows in the corners. Jake figured she was thinking the same thing he was about the stories Carson's cousin told. About the ones nobody says sober. They left footprints, sure enough. 3 sets clear as day. Carson laughed about it, made some crack about haunting the place themselves. Jake didn't laugh. Something about the quiet pressed too heavy on his chest. He found himself looking over his shoulder more than he cared to admit. They didn't find much. No secret basement, no bones. Just rot and silence and something about the air that felt watched, like the place had been holding its breath and waiting. They stayed maybe 20 minutes. Long enough for the sun to slip lower and the trees outside to start casting long, sharp fingers across the walls. Long enough for Jake to think they should leave. He said as much, and Carson didn't argue. Lena was already at the door, pulling it open like she couldn't get enough fresh air fast enough. It wasn't until they stepped outside that Jake noticed it. There were more footprints now. Not fresh. Not theirs, deeper, older, the kind you get. From boots, hard-soled and wide, nothing like the treads Jake wore or Carson's cheap sneakers. They crossed over theirs, intersected in places, circled back toward the pulpit. Toward the altar. Jake followed them with his eyes. They vanished halfway across the floor, not faded, just stopped. What the hell? Carson said, quiet now. Real quiet. Jake said nothing. His stomach had gone cold. He looked out past the church, toward the trees, and saw something he hadn't before. Marks in the dirt, like footprints, yes. But wrong. Toes pointed the wrong way, leading toward the church from the trees. From the dark. Nope, Jake said. His voice came out strangled. We're done. Carson didn't argue. Neither did Lena. They piled into the truck fast and didn't speak until they hit the main road again. And even then, it was only Carson saying, I ain't going back. Out there. Jake agreed. But that night, lying awake with his window cracked to let the night air in, Jake heard footsteps outside. Not loud, not hurried, just soft, steady pacing across the gravel. Back and forth. Back and forth. He told himself it was nothing. Maybe a stray dog. Maybe a deer. Then he remembered something. The footprints at the church hadn't led out. Not toward the door. Not toward the road. They'd stopped in the center of the room. Like whoever made them was still there. Like whoever. Made them never left, or worse, like they followed. It was almost midnight when Jacob Faulkner first saw the child sitting alone in the center of Highway 359, just west of Laredo. His headlights caught the small figure like a spotlight, the pale skin and dirty white shirt glowing against the blacktop. And for a long second, Jacob thought it was some kind of trick of the light, or maybe even a dead animal curled up just so. His first instinct wasn't horror, wasn't even concern. It was confusion, pure and simple. That gut-deep feeling that something was wrong, but your brain hadn't yet found the words to explain why. He let his foot ease off the gas and the truck slowed. The little boy didn't move. Not a twitch, not a flinch against the light glaring into his eyes. Just sat there cross-legged on the center stripe of the highway, hands in his lap, head tilted a little like he was trying to listen for something far off. Jacob's heart started to hammer. Out. Here, this far past town, there shouldn't be anybody. No kids, no people walking, barely any traffic at all this late unless it was truckers running hard for Eagle Pass or old-timers too drunk to make it home straight. He looked in the rearview blackness, looked ahead, just the boy, and beyond. Him, more road curling into the brushy dark. He hit the hazard lights without thinking and eased the truck onto the shoulder, tires crunching gravel. For a moment he just sat there, gripping the wheel hard, staring. The boy hadn't moved. His skin looked too pale, almost blue in the lights. His hair was thin and messy, and his clothes hung off him like they belonged to a bigger kid. No shoes. Not out here, where the asphalt still held the day's heat and the sticker grass would rip your feet bloody. Jacob swallowed hard and cracked his door open. The night air rushed in, heavy with heat and that dusty, bitter smell of creosote and mesquite. Somewhere way off in the brush, a coyote let out a low, uneasy yip. It sounded too close. "Hey, kid," Jacob called, stepping out fully now, his boots thudding onto the gravel. "You all right? You lost?" No answer. Not even a glance. Something about that stillness twisted up inside Jacob like a knot being pulled tighter. He thought of stories he'd heard as a kid sitting in the road as bait, waiting for some poor fool to stop, and then the men hiding in the mesquite came out with knives. Or worse, the kind of stories you laugh off in daylight and remember in the dark. He stood. Still a moment longer, listening. No footsteps, no engines. Just the soft chirr of insects and the hum of his idling truck behind him. He took a slow step forward. "You need help?" he said, softer this time. Still nothing. Not even a blink dot closer now, maybe 10 feet, he saw. The boy's eyes, big and wide, staring past Jacob, pupils blown huge until they looked like holes punched through his face. His lips were moving, Jacob realized, not enough to speak. Just moving, like he was mumbling to someone only he could. Here. That was when the fear settled down deeper in Jacob's gut. Not the sudden kind, not the startled jump scare kind. The old kind. The kind that knew things waited out here in the desert, things that didn't wear the right shapes. I'm gonna get you off the road, all right?" he said, voice shaking now, hand out like he was trying to coax a stray dog. "Just come on, I'll take you to town. We'll find your folks." Still, the kid didn't move. Just sat there like a statue somebody forgot to finish carving. Jacob took another step, then another. He could see now that the kid's skin wasn't just pale, it was filthy, streaked with dirt and something darker. His fingernails were black, his feet raw-looking. His shirt had holes in it big as fists, and the words he was mouthing, over and over, Jacob could almost make them out now. "Don't. Stop. Don't stop. Don't stop." Jacob froze. His mouth went dry. "What?" he said before he could help himself. "Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop." The boy's head turned then, not all the way, not natural. It twisted just enough for Jacob to see the raw, weeping gouge torn into the side of his neck, the blood dried in black rivulets down his shoulder. The skin there wasn't torn fresh, it looked weeks old, rotted in places, crawling with something too small to see but moving. Under the surface like fish under ice. Jacob stumbled back. His boot hit loose gravel and he nearly went down. His heart was slamming so hard it hurt. The boy stood up. Slow, stiff, like something pulling strings inside him. His knees cracked. His arms hung loose at his sides. His mouth never stopped moving. Don't stop. Don't stop. Don't stop. And then he smiled. Not like a kid. Not even like a man. Like something wearing a child's face for practice. Too wide. Too many teeth. Too wrong. Jacob turned and ran. He didn't think about it. His body just did it. The way you pull your hand from fire. Scrambled into the truck, door half shut before. He hit the gas. Tires screamed, gravel spat out behind him, and the boy stood watching him go, getting smaller and smaller in the mirror until the dark swallowed him whole. Jacob drove blind for miles. Didn't look back. Didn't breathe right until the first faint lights of town bled up on the horizon. Even then, he didn't stop. Not until he was home, locked inside with every light burning. The truck left running out front until it coughed dry. In the morning, he told himself it had been a dream. A heat stroke hallucination. Something. Anything but real. But he didn't take that road again. And a week later, when a woman from Hebronville told the news how she'd seen a little boy sitting alone out on the highway just west of Laredo. White shirt, no shoes, mouth moving like he was praying. Jacob knew he hadn't imagined a damn thing. And when she said she'd stopped for him, when she said she'd gotten out of the car, and then she'd vanished, they never found her again. Just the car. Engine running. Driver's door open. Headlights pointed west, toward the empty road. Somewhere out on the flat black highways that carve through the empty stretches near Midland, Texas, they pulled off for gas just past midnight. The map on the dash wasn't helping. The GPS kept flickering like it couldn't make up its mind. About where they were, and for the past 40 miles, there hadn't been much but pump jacks and dead brush stretching out beneath the sky, so wide it felt like it could crush you if you stared at it too long. The gas station squatted low against the roadside, an old tin-roofed relic with one flickering sign buzzing against the silence. EAT, fuel service. Dust spiraled in the headlights as they pulled up. There was something about it even before. They stepped inside. Something about the way it just sat there, like it had been waiting for them, like it had always been there and would always be there, long after they were gone. Like a bad tooth in the gums of Texas. Martin cut the engine. The pump was old, the kind you had to pay inside first. Stay in the car, he told Rachel, though she hadn't asked to come. I'll just get directions. Inside smelled like motor oil and heat, like something that had been burned out a long time ago, but hadn't stopped smoldering. Shelves lined with yellowing snack bags. A soda machine humming in the corner like it was breathing. Behind the counter stood a man. At first glance, he might have been any gas station clerk from 100 small towns. Blue shirt, name patch stitched crooked over the heart. Roy, it said. Skin pale beneath the buzzing fluorescence, lips stretched wide in a smile that didn't seem connected to anything beneath it. Eyes fixed on Martin the moment he stepped through. The door, sharp and unblinking. Not wide, not startled, just open, staring. Evenin', Martin offered, trying for casual. Pump's not tacking my card. The man behind the counter said nothing. That smile never moved, didn't waver. His eyes didn't leave Martin's face. Martin cleared his throat, stepped closer. Look, we're a little lost, I guess. Trying to get back on the 20 eastbound. GPS went to hell about an hour back. Can you help us out? Still no answer. Just that smile. Just those eyes. Martin felt it then, something crawling slow beneath his ribs. A wrongness in the air, Thick, heavy, like the heat before a storm. You? All right, man. Finally, the attendant spoke. His voice didn't match the face, didn't match the body. It was low and slow, as if coming from far away through something thick. You're not supposed to be here. Martin gave a half laugh. Yeah, no kidding. We took a wrong turn, like I said. Just me too. You're not supposed to be. Here, the man said again. Same tone, same cadence. Like a recording on repeat. Martin backed up a step. His eyes flicked around the place, looking for something, anything normal. A calendar, a clock, a register light. Nothing seemed quite right. The clock above the cigarette case was stopped at 3:33. The soda machine kept humming, louder now, like static growing in the walls. You want me to pay cash or not? Martin said, trying to anchor himself in something familiar. The smile widened. Not the mouth, not the lips. The smile. Like it spread beneath the skin, stretched across the bones. You should leave. Martin felt it again, stronger this time. The sense that something had noticed him the moment he'd pulled off the road, that this place wasn't waiting to help travelers but to trap them. Yeah, all right. We'll find somewhere else. He turned to go. You won't. Martin froze. Slowly, he turned back. What's that? You won't find anywhere else. Not now. Behind the man, in the reflection of the cigarette case's glass, something moved. Something tall and thin and wrong, sliding through the shadows where no space existed. Long limbs. A face stretched. Too tight over too many teeth. Eyes like holes burned through paper. Martin's heart kicked against his chest. What is this place? He asked. The attendant blinked then once, slow, deliberate. It was worse than him not blinking at all. It felt like permission being given, like something slipping its leash. This is where the road ends, Roy said, and now his smile moved, pulling up at the corners, cracking the skin. For people who don't pay attention. Martin bolted. Out the door, across the cracked concrete. To the car where Rachel sat watching him with wide, confused eyes. Start it, he barked. Start it now? What? What's just start the goddamn car? She did. Headlights flared weak against the dark. Martin threw himself into the seat, slammed the lock down. In the rearview mirror, the attendant stood just outside. The door now, bathed in the sick yellow light of the sign. Smiling, not moving, not blinking. They tore out of the lot in a spray of gravel. The GPS still flickered uselessly. The road behind them didn't show up on the map. The road ahead twisted on itself like a snake eating its own tail. Where are we going? Rachel cried. Martin didn't answer. His hands were locked white-knuckled on the wheel. His eyes in the mirror, watching that patch of darkness shrink, but never vanish. The lights of the station burning in the rear view, they drove. Miles slid by without landmarks, without turns, without sense. Gas needle dropping slowed out eventually, the engine sputtered. Martin sat still. Listened to the quiet. Out there in the dark, beyond the edge of the headlights, a shape moved, slow, deliberate, coming closer. The smile appeared first. Pale teeth wide against the night. You're not supposed to be here, Roy said again, though his mouth didn't move. Rachel screamed when she saw his eyes. Open, unblinking, burning in the dark like holes through the world. Somewhere far behind them, the gas station sign flickered once, went dark. They'd been driving since Lubbock. A long, flat, sunburnt stretch of West Texas highway behind them, and still hours to go before they hit their motel somewhere outside San Angelo. Dust caked the windshield. The AC wheezed like an old man. Country static played low on the radio, the kind of sound that makes you feel lonelier than silence. Kyle had needed to piss for the last 40 miles, but he hadn't wanted to stop, Not after sunset. Not after the last gas station. The one with the old woman who stared too long at their plates and said nothing while ringing them up. But Sarah had insisted. Said she needed to stretch. Said her back hurt. Said she couldn't sit another mile feeling the way she felt without snapping. So Kyle pulled off where the guardrail had gone rusty and bent, where a narrow county road dipped off into scrub oak and caliche. The bridge wasn't marked on the map. It wasn't really even a bridge anymore. A hump of cracked concrete slouched over a skinny dry creek bed, the trickle beneath it looking more like an oil stain than water. Old graffiti curled on the support pillars beneath, half-faded names and numbers from the 90s and older. Kyle stood off to one side, relieving himself against the far guardrail, eyes darting left and right like he expected to see something coming out of the mesquite. Sarah walked slow circles in the gravel, arms overhead, working the knots out of her shoulders. The air smelled like dust and iron and something wetter, something stagnant and sour, leaking up from under the bridge like breath from a long-closed mouth. "You hear that?" she asked. Kyle zipped up and gave her a look. "Hear what?" She tilted her head, listening. Voices. He barked a humorless laugh. "Ain't nobody out here but us." But she kept listening, frowning now, stepping closer to the concrete. Lip where vines twisted and hung like veins from the bridge's underbelly. "I swear to God, Kyle, someone's down there." He didn't want to look. His whole body rebelled against it. Some bone-deep instinct telling him not to go poking at things better left alone. But he sighed, because it was Sarah, and because she'd been on edge all trip and this wasn't the time to start telling her she was imagining things. He walked over, boots grinding loose gravel, and peered down. Dark down there. The kind of dark that felt thicker than it should have been. He could just make out the sliver of creek reflecting the last of the sky like a broken mirror. Beneath the bridge, a crawl space of shadow and tangled roots and old rebar. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. Not yet. "See?" he said. Nothing but Kyle. He froze. Not loud, not even clear. But something under there had said his name. Drawn out soft, like breath on glass. Sarah's eyes were wide now, fixed on the dark. I heard it too. Sarah. Both names like lullabies half swallowed by water. Like the creek itself had learned how to talk. Kyle stepped back fast, grabbed her by the wrist. "We're leaving." But she didn't budge. "What is it?" "I don't care. Come on." He pulled her, hard enough to stumble, back toward the truck. The voices didn't follow them up the slope, not allowed anyway. But Kyle felt them like threads dragging behind his ribs. The cab door slammed. The ignition caught. Headlights burned. Pale tunnels into the scrub as he threw it in reverse and spun gravel getting out of there. They didn't talk for miles. Not until the radio died, just snapped off like someone had cut a wire. The AC followed. Dashboard lights flickered, then went black. Truck still running, engine still humming steady, but inside everything had gone dead silent except for them breathing. "I think it's following us," Sarah whispered. Kyle didn't answer, because he thought the same thing, out past the windshield. The dark looked deeper now. Trees crowded close to the road where there hadn't been any before. And ahead, something white hung across the lane like a ribbon tied from branch to branch. He eased to a stop, squinted. Not a ribbon, writing. Paint. Thick and clumsy. Strung from one side of the road to the other on a sagging strip of plastic. Turn around. Kyle's mouth dried up. "We're not turning around." Sarah's hand found his on the gear shift, clutching tight enough to hurt. What if we already passed it? What if we're already back there and don't know it? He didn't answer. Just drove under the sign, ducking instinctively like it might catch him around the neck. The road beyond didn't look familiar anymore. No signs, no fences, no stars overhead, just clouds hanging low and bruised with something like heat lightning. Flickering behind them, and under it all, still, those voices. Quieter now, patient. Kyle. Sarah, calling like home. Like come back. Like you've always been here. Sarah started crying without making a sound, her shoulders shaking against the seatbelt. Kyle's hand stayed locked on the wheel, knuckles gone. Pale, they passed another bridge. Same cracked concrete, same rusted guardrails. Same dry creek hissing beneath like breath through teeth. Sarah pointed, shaking. That's the same bridge. No. It is. Look at the pillar. Spray paint there, faded but legible in the headlights. Kyle 1997, Sarah 1997, neither of them had been here before. Not in 97, not ever. Not until tonight, but their names were waiting anyway. Under the bridge, something shifted. Something big enough to scrape rebar and stone. Something wet enough to drip where there was no water. Kyle hit the gas. The truck screamed forward. Another mile. Another. Bridge. Same one. Same names. Sarah sobbing now, curled against the door like she could squeeze herself through the glass to get free. Kyle drove faster, headlights shaking. The road trembling under them like ribs about to crack. This time the sign across the road wasn't paint, it was bone. Vertebrae strung like pearls on gut, spelling out the words they didn't want to see. Stop. Listen. Come home. He slammed the brakes. Tires skidded in loose dirt. Under the bridge, the shadows shifted again. They weren't under it anymore. They were around it. Sliding long and slick up the embankments, reaching fingers of dark through the weeds. Kyle turned to Sarah. Out now. She nodded, blind with terror, fumbling the door open. They ran. Into the dark, into the brush, not caring about thorns or snakes or getting lost. Just away from the truck, away from the bridge, away from the voices. Didn't matter. Didn't change. A thing, because every step just brought them back to the gravel shoulder, back to the cracked concrete, back to the water that wasn't water whispering beneath. Kyle 1997. Sarah 1997. Waiting like headstones. And now the voices weren't whispers anymore. They were mouths, open wide and grinning beneath the bridge, full of teeth like glass and nails, full of tongues that had learned all their names. Sarah fell first. One step too far into the dark, into the roots that opened like fingers. She didn't scream long. Just a breath sucked out and down, like water through a drain. Kyle ran. He thought he did, but when he looked again, when he really looked, he was already under the bridge. Already kneeling. Already listening. Already home. And the thing that wasn't water sighed around him and called his name one last time, slow and sweet and final. It started raining about 10 miles outside of Tyler, just as the sun was folding itself down behind a mess of thick, bruised-looking clouds. That kind of summer rain that feels warm and alive, like something breathing on the back of your neck. Lydia hated driving in it, but Mark was already half asleep in the passenger seat, head slumped against the window, mouth open like a dead fish. Typical. She didn't want to fight about it. Not tonight, not again. She just wanted to find a place. To sleep, somewhere cheap. Somewhere easy. Somewhere quiet. That's how they ended up pulling into the kind of roadside motel you don't notice until you need it. The neon sign just said motel in flickering red letters, the rest of whatever name it used to have long since burned out or broken off. There was only one other car in the lot, a rust-bitten Chevy pickup with Oklahoma plates and a busted-out taillight. Lydia pulled up front and killed the engine, listening to the hiss of the tires cooling in the wet. For a second she just sat there, watching the rain sheet down the windshield, wondering if it was worth waking Mark or if she should just go in herself. She decided on herself. The lobby door squeaked like something in pain when she pushed it open. Inside smelled like wet carpet, old cigarettes, and the faintest trace of something sweetly chemical, bleach maybe, or the kind of cleaner they use in hospitals. Behind the desk sat a man who looked like he'd been here a long, long time. His skin hung on him like laundry left too long on the line, and his eyes were sunk so deep in his skull they barely caught the light. He watched her come in without blinking. "We need a room for the night," Lydia said, her voice too loud in the stale, humming quiet of the place. The man nodded once, slow, like his neck didn't quite work right. "Got plenty open. Only you." "2 tonight." "Okay. Good." She tried to smile. "Just for the night. Nothing fancy." He slid a key across the counter. Not a card. A real key, heavy and brass, and marked room 3 in black plastic numbers. "Checkout's 11. Don't lose it." Lydia took it with a nod, scribbled her name and license plate number on the ledger without reading the rest. She could feel his eyes on her the whole time, like he was trying to figure out where she fit inside his world of dust and silence. Mark hadn't woken up. She shook him when she got back to the car, and he followed her to the room without asking. Questions, still moving like someone underwater. Room 3 was at the far end of the lot, near where the weedy gravel gave up and became woods again. It looked like all the others, single window with a rusted metal frame, door painted the same sickly beige as the rest of the building. Curtains drawn so tight no light leaked out. She opened it up and found more of the same inside, faded. Bedspread, cracked linoleum floor, humming fridge with nothing in it but stale air and a hairline crack in the corner. Mark flopped onto the bed, without even taking off his shoes. Lydia locked the door, threw the chain for good measure, and pulled the curtain shut. Not that there was anything to see. Just the woods breathing in the dark. She didn't sleep well. Not because of Mark's snoring, though that didn't help. It was the kind of night where the silence felt thick, like something pressing down on her chest. Somewhere around 2 in the morning, she woke up cold, her skin prickling all over like she'd stepped into a freezer. For a second she thought, maybe the air conditioner had kicked on, but there wasn't one. Just a little fan on the dresser that wasn't even plugged in. That's when she heard it, knock-soft. Deliberate. 3 short taps, like the kind you use when you know someone's already home. It came from the bathroom door. She sat up slow, her heart kicking against her ribs like it wanted out. The bathroom door was closed. She didn't remember closing it. Didn't remember Mark getting up either. He was still out cold beside her, one arm thrown over his face like he was trying to block out the world. Another knock. A little louder this time. From inside, she told herself it wasn't possible. It had to be the pipes settling, or some weird acoustics in this old place. Motels like this have thin walls, weird noises, drafty gaps in the frame. Nothing to worry about. Nothing real. But the doorknob turned just a fraction. Just enough to let her see it wasn't locked. Mark. She grabbed his shoulder, shook hard. "Mark, wake up. Somebody's in the bathroom." He groaned, squinted at her like she was speaking another language. "What are you talking about?" "Nobody's here but—" U.S. Another knock. This time it didn't sound polite. Mark sat up. He heard it too now. "What the hell?" Lydia slid off the bed, bare feet cold on the cracked floor. She grabbed her phone off the nightstand, thumb hovering over the flashlight, not sure if she wanted to see. Mark was standing now, staring at the door like he expected it to open on its own. Neither of them moved for a long minute. Then, quietly, from behind the door, "Let me out." Lydia's breath caught. Mark looked at her, pale in the dark, his mouth working but no sound coming out. "I heard it," he said finally. "Jesus, I heard it too." She thought about running, just grabbing the keys, the bag, leaving this place behind. But she couldn't seem to move. It felt like her bones were full of ice water. Mark crossed the room in 2 strides, hand on the knob before she could stop him. "Don't," she started, but it was too late. He yanked the door open. Nothing, just the bathroom. Ugly pink tile, cracked mirror, sink dripping slow like a heartbeat. Shower curtain drawn half shut. He pulled it back. Nothing there. He shut the door again, locked it this time. Must be someone next door. Thin walls, that's all. Lydia didn't argue. What was the point? Neither of them really believed it. She made him push the dresser in front of the door. It wasn't much, just a little insurance. They lay awake until dawn, listening to the rain come and go in fits, and every so often she thought she heard it again, that soft knock, just once, like a question waiting to be answered. They checked out without showering. The man behind the desk smiled like he knew something she didn't. "Sleep well," Lydia didn't answer. Mark wouldn't meet his eyes. They were halfway to the car when she thought to ask, "Hey, that room, room 3. Anybody stay there before?" "US?" The man's smile didn't change. "No one in a long time." "Not since." "Well, doesn't matter now?" She wanted to push, to ask since what. But Mark was already getting in the car, and the man was turning away, already disappearing into the dim behind the counter. She followed him, slid behind the wheel, and drove them back out onto the highway without looking back. In the rear view, she thought she saw someone standing at the door of room 3, watching them go. Someone thin, pale, hand pressed against the glass like they were waiting. Like they'd always be waiting, and when she checked her phone later, flipping through by habit as the miles unwound beneath her tires, she found a photo she didn't remember taking. Black, blurry. The inside of the motel bathroom, mirror catching the faint shape of a face behind her shoulder, smiling. They first noticed the dog about 10 miles south of Livingston, just past where the pine woods got thick and the road narrowed into that lonely strip of cracked blacktop that seemed to stretch forever between gas stations. It was limping when it stepped out of the tree line, favoring its back leg like it had been hit by a car or maybe tangled with something bigger out in the woods. Its ribs showed through its fur, and even from inside the truck, Claire could tell its eyes weren't right. They weren't cloudy like an old dog's or golden like most strays. They looked wrong, too dark, too focused. Rick slowed the truck without thinking, because that's just the kind of man he was, even after everything. Even after Houston and the years they spent trying to piece things back together. Claire told him not to stop. She didn't yell, but her hand was tight on the armrest, and she didn't look at the dog. "Don't stop," she said again, softer. "Keep going." Rick gave her that look, the one she hated, the one that said she'd gotten too jumpy, too suspicious of everything that breathed. But even so, he didn't stop. He just eased the truck around the animal and kept driving. In the mirror, Claire watched it turn its head, slow and deliberate, to follow them with its gaze until it vanished around the bend. They didn't speak for a while. The woods pressed in thicker here, and the sun was sinking fast behind the treetops. Out here, dusk fell like a stone. 20 minutes later, it was standing on the road ahead of them again. Claire didn't say a word this time. She didn't have to. Rick's knuckles whitened on the wheel. He honked once, short and sharp, and the dog stepped aside with a limp so pronounced it almost collapsed onto the shoulder. As they passed, its head swiveled to track them again. Slow and steady. Its mouth hung open, not in a pant, but like it was trying to remember how to smile. "Same dog?" Rick asked after a mile or two. Claire kept her eyes on the trees sliding past her window. "Of course it is. But how?" "It just is." The road curved, dipped, and then stretched flat and empty for miles. Nothing ahead but scrub pines and the long smear of twilight. Rick pressed the gas harder. Neither of them mentioned the silence in the woods, how even the cicadas seemed to have shut up now. No birds. No wind. Just the hum of the tires and the low, steady groan of the engine. They hit 70, 80 and still, just ahead of the next bend, the dog waited. Limping, watching, always ahead. The third time, Rick stopped. Not slammed the brakes, not panicked. Just slowed to a crawl and eased the truck onto the shoulder gravel. Claire's stomach sank like a stone when he opened the door. "What the hell are you doing?" "I'm gonna scare it off." "You can't scare something like that." Rick gave her a look. "It's a hurt dog, Claire." He stepped out, closing the door soft like he didn't want to startle it. Claire wanted to scream at him to get back in, to just drive and don't look back. But the words stuck somewhere in her chest. The dog didn't run, didn't growl. Just stood there, ribs heaving like bellows, staring at Rick with those dark, impossible eyes. Closer now, Claire could see its fur was wrong too, patchy in places, scabbed over in others. Like something had tried to skin it and given up halfway through. Rick clapped his hands once. "Go on, get out of here." The dog just smiled, not with its mouth, but with its whole face. With those awful, shining eyes, Rick took a step back. Then another dot. It limped forward, slow, deliberate, dragging its bad leg behind like a sack of bones. Claire's breath caught when she saw its shadow wasn't right. Not stretched behind it, like Rick's, but curled up beneath it like something squatting, waiting to unfold. "Get in the truck," she said. Rick hesitated, then obeyed. Once the door slammed shut between them and it, Claire slapped the lock down hard. Rick stared ahead, his face gone pale and waxy. "I think it smiled at me," he said. Claire said nothing. Just told him to drive, faster this time. Past the old gas station that hadn't been open in years. Past the gutted trailer homes where porch lights flickered, though no one lived inside. Past all the things the map still said were there but hadn't been real in a long, long time. The woods leaned in. The sky went black. Ahead, just beyond the reach of their headlights, the dog waited. It didn't limp anymore. Its shadow stretched long now, like a hand crawling across the asphalt to meet them. Rick gripped the wheel like he meant to tear it off. "What the hell is it? Why does it keep?" Claire shook her head. "It's not a dog." They didn't slow down, didn't stop again. But it didn't matter. Every mile they ate, every turn they took, it was there. Not chasing, waiting, always ahead, sometimes on the shoulder, sometimes right in the center of the road, head low. Teeth bared in something halfway between a grin and a threat. The signs grew fewer, the road rougher, until there weren't even reflectors anymore. Just that single ribbon of cracked blacktop unraveling into nothing. "You said this cuts through." "To 59, Claire said, though she already knew better. Rick nodded, swallowing hard. "It used to." They drove until the woods swallowed the road entirely, until even the stars blinked out. And still, ahead the dog waited. Its eyes burned now, two coals in the dark, and in the silence that fell between them, the hush of the engine finally dying. The breath catching in their throats, they heard it speak, though it never opened its mouth. "Welcome back." Claire didn't scream. Not this time. She just closed her eyes and let it come. It started with something so ordinary, so unremarkable, that neither of them would have remembered it if not for how the night ended. They were driving west on a stretch of lonely Texas highway, flat and cracked, the kind where even the moon looks bored and the radio only picks up the ghost of country music stations fading in and out between static. A long drive late at night, that's all it was supposed to be. That long black ribbon of road between Austin and some nowhere oil town near Odessa, one of those places where you only stop if you're out of gas or dying. Claire was behind the wheel, her boyfriend Mason slouched in the passenger seat, half asleep, sneakers up on the dashboard despite her telling him to knock it off 3 times already. The air smelled like old fast food and a weird, burnt plastic tang of overheated electronics coming from the vents. Both of them tired. Both of them thinking more about how good a motel bed would feel than about anything happening on the road ahead. Which is probably why it took a minute to register the figure standing just off the shoulder, thumb out, silhouetted by the glow of the car's high beams. He wasn't waving. Not exactly. Just standing there, waiting, head tilted at a strange angle, like he was listening for something under the dirt. Claire instinctively started to ease her foot off the gas. "What are you doing?" Mason mumbled, sitting up straighter. "Keep driving. There's a guy, look." "Yeah, exactly. Keep driving." But she didn't. She pulled over, because something about the way the guy stood there made her think of her dad, back when his truck had broken down on I-35 in. The rain, and how people just sped by like he wasn't even human. She told herself it was just kindness. Maybe the last bit of kindness left in her tonight. He looked normal enough when he stepped into the glow of the headlights. Jeans, boots, a windbreaker zipped up against the chill. 35, maybe 40, a little too thin. Hair slicked back. The wrong way. But his face, there was something about his face. Too pale, too sharp. Smiling already, like he knew something they didn't. Car trouble? Claire asked through the cracked window. He nodded. Out of gas. Been out here a while. His voice was smooth, friendly, but flat. Not Texas flat, something older than that. Where you headed? Same way you are. Mason leaned over. We don't know where we're headed. The man smiled wider, like that was the funniest thing he'd heard in years. Doesn't matter. Just need a lift. Against every instinct screaming inside her, Claire unlocked the doors. He slid into the back seat without another word. No bag, no phone. Just him, sitting there with his hands neatly folded in his lap like someone being driven to a funeral. The road swallowed them again, black and endless. Mason didn't say much after that. Neither did the man. Claire kept sneaking glances in. The mirror, expecting him to look out the window, yawn, fidget. But he didn't move. Just sat there, smiling softly, like he was listening to a song only he could hear. 20 minutes passed, maybe more. Time started to feel slippery, stretchy, like taffy pulling apart in her head. The headlights seemed dimmer, the road darker, the air inside the car heavier, and that smell something beneath the air freshener and the fast food bags. Wet leather, burnt hair. Finally, Mason couldn't take it anymore. So, where exactly should we drop you? The man didn't answer. His eyes met Claire's in the mirror, and it felt like someone had run ice water down her spine. "Anywhere's fine," he said. "I won't be here long." What's that supposed to mean? Mason snapped, louder than he meant to. Smiled again, wider this time. Teeth too white, too straight. Like something out of a catalog for people who didn't exist. "You'll see," Claire's hands tightened on the wheel. "I think we're gonna drop you up ahead, near that gas station. You can figure it out from there." But when they passed the exit, there was no gas station. Just more road, more dark, and when she looked again, the man was gone. No sound. No door opening. Nothing. Just empty seat, still faintly dented from where he'd been sitting. Mason swore, loud. What the hell, where the hell did he? Claire didn't answer. Her throat had closed up. She drove faster. Didn't stop again until they hit a town big enough to have a strip mall and a Whataburger. They sat there in the parking lot, lights on, engine running, too scared to turn. Around, too scared to look in the back seat again, they told themselves they must have imagined it. Maybe he'd never been there. Maybe they'd picked him up and dropped him off and forgot. Road hypnosis, exhaustion, something. They argued about it, then laughed about it, then argued again. Then they just stopped talking altogether. They drove. The last 100 miles home without looking in the mirror. Weeks passed. Life went on, mostly Dot until the night Claire saw him again. She was at a red light, half asleep at the wheel, Mason beside her flipping through his phone. Just another car passing by, going the other way. A beat-up sedan, grimy windows, headlights barely working. Inside, in the back seat, a pale face, smiling, watching her. She whipped her head around so fast it popped her neck. Gone again, or maybe. Not Dot, because now, every time she looked in the mirror rear view, bathroom, store window, it felt like something was looking back, not her reflection. Not exactly. Something smiling behind it, Dot, and sometimes, when the car was quiet enough, when the road stretched too long and too dark beneath the tires, she thought she heard breathing from the backseat. Dot waiting, Dot listening, Dot smiling. It started with a phone call from a driver who came into the truck stop just before dawn. He said there was a man standing on the I-20 overpass just outside Abilene, looking down at the road below like he was trying to solve a problem he couldn't figure out. The weird part, he said, was how the guy never moved. Not his arms, not his head, not even his goddamn shadow, the driver told me, like I was supposed to understand what that meant. Sun was climbing up and his shadow just stayed where it was, stuck there like it didn't belong to him. Normally I'd have written it off as a long-haul hallucination. Too many hours behind the wheel, too much caffeine, and not enough sleep. But then 2 more drivers mentioned it before breakfast. Then an old rancher came in for his usual, muttering about seeing a man up there, just standing, same damn spot as last week. Said it made the cattle uneasy. Said the crows wouldn't perch on the railing anymore. I didn't believe in ghost stories. Still don't, really. But this thing, it got under my skin. Kept me awake that night. 3 days later, I drove out there. Just me, the road, and the sky bleeding out that pale West Texas light. I pulled onto the shoulder beneath the overpass and stepped out. Gravel crunched under my boots. Wind rolled soft and lazy over the scrubland, hot already though the sun hadn't fully cleared the horizon. Dot, and sure as hell, there he was, a man, standing up there like a scarecrow someone had forgotten to take down. His head hung forward just a little, like he was staring through the concrete at something 100 miles below. Couldn't make out much about him from where I stood, but I could see the shape of him against the sky, tall, thin, dressed in. Something gray or black that hung off him like it was too big or too old or both. And his shadow, the sun, was behind me. His shadow should have been stretching long across the pavement behind him, onto the metal guardrail, maybe bleeding off into the westbound lanes. But it wasn't Dot, it sat still. A dark puddle at his feet, didn't change, didn't move. I thought about calling out to him, asking if he was all right, asking if he needed a ride maybe, but something told me to keep my mouth shut. Some animal part of me, the same part that knows not to poke at a snake sunning itself on a rock. I just stood there for a long minute, watching, and then he moved. Not like a man shifts when he gets uncomfortable. Not like someone stretching his legs after standing too long. It was more like he unfolded, like his arms weren't arms at all but lengths of rope unwinding from the shape of a man. They came down slow and smooth, curling once around the railing as if testing it. His head tilted up, just enough for me to see the lower half of his face. His mouth was sewn shut. Big, crude stitches, black thread through pale skin like someone had done it in a hurry, or done it angry. I stepped back without meaning to. My heel caught a loose stone and I nearly went down. When I looked again, he was watching me. Not moving, not breathing, just watching. I didn't stay long after that. I drove straight back to the truck stop, locked myself in the office, and smoked half a pack before I realized my hands were still. Shaking. Word spread like it always does in towns like this. Folks started avoiding the overpass, started taking the long way around, even if it meant burning extra gas. The county sent a deputy out, and he came back pale and silent, and quit his job a week later. Then things got worse. People driving under it late at night said they'd see him standing there, arms stretched out now, longer than they should be, touching the guardrails on either side like he was holding the whole damn road together. Truckers started reporting radio static under the overpass, voices whispering things that didn't sound like English. A girl went missing, last seen walking along the frontage road toward that bridge. Never found her. Never found her shoes either, but they found drag marks in the gravel leading up the embankment. One night, after too much whiskey and not enough sense, I drove out again. I told myself I wasn't scared. I told myself I was going to prove it wasn't. Real. It was darker than it should have been. Clouds rolled in fast, swallowing the moon. My headlights barely cut a hole in it. I parked beneath the overpass, engine idling, and stared up. He wasn't there. For a moment, I felt relief. I even laughed. Goddamn fool, I said to myself, scared of shadows. Scared of nothing. Then something tapped the hood of my truck. Soft, like a fingertip. Then again, I leaned forward, peering up through the windshield. Something pale hung down from the concrete lip of the overpass. Not rope, not wire. A hand. Long fingers, nails like old ivory. The hand uncurled, palms spreading flat against the hood, then another joined it. Slowly, they pulled something down. After them. He came down headfirst, like a spider working its way toward prey. Stitched mouth grinning wide beneath where his nose should have been. His eyes were gone, just pits. Just darkness. I slammed it into reverse, gunned it backward onto the shoulder. He dropped onto the asphalt without a sound. His arms hung wrong, bent too many times between shoulder and hand. His feet pointed the wrong way. His shadow spread beneath him, untouched by my headlights. Darker than the night itself, he started walking toward me. I didn't look back when I hit the gas. Didn't look in the rear view. Drove blind through my fear all the way home. Now I don't drive at night anymore. I don't go near that overpass, not even in daylight. I hear he's still there. Still standing. Still watching. Some nights. When? The wind's just right. I swear I hear the thread creaking in his mouth. Stretching. Ready to tear. Ready to let him speak. And whatever he says when that happens, I don't want to be close enough to hear it. They weren't even supposed to be on this road. That's how these things always seem to start, right? Wrong turn or a bad shortcut or some dumb argument about directions where nobody wants to admit they're wrong. That was Eddie and Carla. Tonight, somewhere deep in the back roads of West Texas, on the black stretch of nothing between towns that don't even show up on maps anymore, they hadn't seen another car in hours. Just miles of dead fields, fence posts leaning like drunks. In the dark, and the same scratchy old Hank Williams song barely coming through on the radio. The needle on the gas gauge had been creeping toward empty since sundown, and neither one of them had said much about it. Not out loud. Both of them watching it, though. Both of them knowing it. When the old gas station came into view, it didn't even seem real at first. Just a pair of cracked street lamps throwing sick yellow light on an empty lot. A peeling sign swinging in the wind that might have once said Texaco or Gulf, but was just a ghost of paint now. The building behind the pumps sagged like it had arthritis, the windows gone black and the doors long locked up. But the pumps were still there. Ancient things, chipped red paint and rust bleeding down the sides like old wounds. Carla said nothing as Eddie pulled in. She just hugged herself tighter in her hoodie and watched. The windows like something might be watching them right back. Eddie got out without turning off the engine. The wind hit him first, dry and mean, like breath off a grave. Then the silence. Not even crickets out here, no wind through the grass. Just that hum from the street lamps and the tick of the cooling engine. He stared at the pump in front of him for a long moment, squinting at the faded numbers behind glass clouded with grime. Then he grabbed the nozzle, flipped the lever up. Nothing. The pump stayed dark. No numbers rolled. No click of the meter. Waking up, he squeezed the handle anyway. Carla watched from inside as he stood there, staring down at the nozzle like it had betrayed him. She could see his mouth moving, probably cursing, probably blaming her somehow for this, even though she hadn't driven a mile. Then she noticed something else, the needle on the dash. It had been kissing E just a second ago, hadn't it? Now, it was climbing. Quarter tank, half full, slowly, smoothly, like there was an invisible hand beneath the car pouring gas. Straight into the tank, she leaned forward, eyes wide. Eddie hadn't even started pumping. He dropped the nozzle after a second, backing away like it burned. The handle smacked against the pump with a dull metal clunk and hung there, dripping nothing. No stain beneath it. No smell of gas in the air. Eddie got back in without a word. Just slid behind the wheel, closed the door soft like a man afraid of waking something up. Did you? Carla started, but he shook his head. Tank's full, he said. Let's go. So they went. Back onto that empty road, headlights catching only more dark, more dirt, more endless black. Carla watched the gauge. Full. Solid full. Like they just pulled off the lot of some fancy new station with those digital pumps and the little screens that play music while you fill up. Except there hadn't been any gas. There hadn't even been power. Not really. Just those sick lights buzzing and the wind scraping at nothing. How far to the next town? She asked after a while. Eddie shrugged. His knuckles were white on the wheel. 40 miles maybe more. She settled back, tried to shake off the feeling crawling up her spine. That cold tickle like fingers pressing under her skin, behind her neck. The road kept coming. The gas stayed full. The next town never came. The highway twisted and turned. Signs faded down to bare metal, no mile markers, no exits. Just blacktop and night and the car eating up distance that didn't seem to lead anywhere. The gauge never moved. Not down. Not at all. How long we been driving? Carla asked sometime later, voice low like she didn't want to break whatever spell had them trapped. Eddie didn't answer right away. His eyes flicked to the rear view, back to the road. Hour, maybe more. No towns? No towns. No stars overhead now. No moon. Just that stretch of lights in front of them, that ribbon of road unspooling forever into the dark. And then, up ahead, another shape out of nowhere. Another station. Same busted lamps. Same peeling sign. Same red pump standing like rusted sentries. Eddie slowed. They pulled in. Not because they needed gas, but because what the hell else were they supposed to do? He got out again. Same wind, same silence. Same pump. Same lever. Same nothing. He squeezed the handle. The gauge on the dash jumped again. Topped off. Full. Even though it hadn't dropped a hair since the last stop. Carla watched through the windshield, breath fogging the glass. Her chest felt tight. Like there wasn't enough air in the whole world anymore. Eddie got back in slow. Shut the door soft. It's the same place, she whispered. Same station, same pump. He didn't argue. Just put the car in gear and pulled back onto the road. This time they didn't make it a mile before the lights appeared again. Ahead, to the right. Another station, or the same. Or something wearing the skin of one. Eddie didn't even slow down. The lights stayed behind them. Then ahead again. Again. The road curved and there it was. The gas station. like it had moved with them, or they'd never left. Like they were running circles inside the mouth of something too big and too old to understand. Carla's phone said 2:13 a.m., then 2:13 a.m. again, then 2:13 a.m. forever. "We're not getting out," she said, not really to Eddie, more to herself. Like saying it would make it true. Not this time, but the car slowed anyway. Like it wanted to stop. Like it was being pulled. Eddie's hands weren't on the wheel anymore. The lights from the pumps painted the windshield yellow and sick. The shadows behind the glass door of the building moved. Not people, not shapes that should move. Just outlines thick as smoke, blacker than the dark around them, shifting in slow, hungry ways. Watching, waiting. Eddie opened the door. Carla grabbed his arm. "No, don't get out." But he was already gone, walking toward the pump like a man dreaming. Like he'd done this before, like he'd always done it. He lifted the nozzle, squeezed the handle. Carla screamed or tried. Nothing came out but breath. The gauge climbed again. Beyond full, the needle spun, quivering against the pin like it wanted to break loose and fly through the glass. Eddie dropped the nozzle, turned to look at her through the windshield. His eyes weren't right. Too black. Too empty. He mouthed something. Run. The lights blew out all at once. The dark swallowed everything. Carla woke up behind the wheel, alone. The engine dead. The tank empty. The road gone. Just dust and weeds and the bones of a station that hadn't pumped gas in 50 years. She walked. Didn't look back. Never saw Eddie again. But sometimes when the wind's just right, she hears the click of the pump handle, the buzz of dead lights, and the numbers spinning, even though there's no gas. There never was. They had been driving east out of Lubbock for nearly 2 hours when they saw it. A silver sedan, nose first down in the ditch off Highway 84, passenger side crumpled like a beer can. The driver's door swung open wide as if whoever had been inside had left in a hurry or been dragged. It was maybe 100 yards ahead when they first noticed it. Enough time for the headlights to catch on the broken glass scattered across the asphalt like frost on a winter morning. Travis eased off the gas and drifted them onto the shoulder without really thinking. Instinct more than anything. Out here in the dark plains of West Texas, where the horizon rolls flat and endless under a night sky heavy with stars, you stop for wrecks. You help if you can. That's just how it's always been. Shit, Sarah said beside him, breath fogging the glass as she leaned forward. That looks bad. They sat there a moment, headlights aimed straight into the weeds and the wreckage. It had been a sedan, once something like a Camry or maybe an Accord. Hard to tell anymore. The front end was mashed almost to the windshield, and something dark had leaked out beneath it, pooling into the dead grass like oil or blood. No lights on, Travis said, more to himself than to her. No hazards. No one waving us down. Someone might be hurt. We should check. He nodded and left the truck running, hazards blinking into the dark behind them like a heartbeat. He grabbed the flashlight from the glove box, the heavy one he kept there for emergencies, and they crossed the gravel shoulder together. Gravel crunched under boots and sneakers. Crickets chirred, steady and oblivious. The air smelled faintly of diesel and dirt, a clean kind of loneliness that hung around these stretches of road like a ghost. Up close, the car was worse. Windshield spiderwebbed from the inside. Airbags limp and deflated. The driver's seat empty, seatbelt hanging slack and unbuckled. Travis swung the beam of light across the cab. No blood that he could see. No signs of anyone inside. Justin Old fast food bag on the floorboards and an empty child's car seat buckled in the back, tilting slightly from the impact. "Hello?" Sarah called. "Anyone out here? Are you okay?" No answer. Only the wind moving through brittle grass. She circled the car slowly, peering down the ditch like maybe someone had stumbled off into the dark, dazed or dying. But there were no footprints in the dirt, no drag marks. Just that leaking stain beneath the engine and a faint smell of burned rubber. Travis checked the plates out of habit. "Texas, expired last year. This just happened," he said. "No way. This thing's been sitting out here long. Look at the glass. Still fresh." Sarah stood hugging herself, watching the empty fields like she expected someone to come running out of them. "We should call it in. Already on it." He pulled out his phone, thumbed 911, gave their location as best he could. Mile marker, highway number, landmarkless darkness stretching in every direction. The dispatcher sounded calm but skeptical. "You're sure?" "We don't have any reports of a wreck out there. No active calls in that area tonight." "Well, there's one." "Now," Travis said, glancing back at the crumpled hulk. "Looks fresh. Nobody around. Might have walked off." "You want to send someone out?" They said they would. A trooper was 20 minutes away. Travis hung up and looked at Sarah. "They're coming." Said they didn't know about it until now. "That's weird," she said. "You'd think someone would have called by now. Or the person who crashed it. Maybe they couldn't." They waited by the truck with the hazards flashing, watching the wreck from a distance like it might move if they took their eyes off. The fields lay quiet, moonless, stretching to black horizons where distant windmills blinked red in slow intervals. No other cars passed. The trooper pulled up eventually, floodlights sweeping across them, blue and red strobes painting the roadside in uneasy color. He got out, young guy, friendly enough but carrying himself like someone who'd rather be anywhere else. "You the ones called it in?" Travis nodded. "Right there. We found it like that maybe 20-30 minutes ago." The trooper frowned. Looked past them. "Found what?" "The car," Sarah said. "It's right there." But when they turned, the ditch was empty. No silver sedan. No broken glass. No skid marks. Just grass, bent and waving gently in the wind. They stared, both of them. Travis felt something cold move down his neck. He swung the flashlight over the ditch again, up and down, back and forth. Nothing. Not even the stain where the oil had been. "It was here," he said. "I swear to God, right here." Sarah's face had gone pale. "We walked right up to it. We looked inside. There was a car seat." The trooper looked between them like maybe this was a prank or a waste of his time. "Ma'am, sir, I've been patrolling this stretch all night. Nobody's reported anything. I haven't passed any wreck. You sure it wasn't farther up?" "No," Travis said. "Right here. We stopped. We called you from right here." The trooper walked the ditch. With his flashlight anyway, kicked around the grass. Nothing. No debris. No glass. Not even the faintest scuff in the dirt where a car might have gone off-road. Just clean, undisturbed earth. "Maybe you saw something from the road," he said after a while. "Lights playing tricks on you. Happens out here." Mirage. Effect. Reflections. "Hell, I've seen deer carcasses look like people if you catch 'em wrong." "It wasn't lights," Sarah said. "It was a car." "We walked right up to it." The trooper just nodded, wrote down their names, thanked them for their time, and told them to drive safe. They got back on the road without speaking, both of them watching the ditches as the highway unwound ahead, mile after empty mile. Neither of them saw it again, but weeks later, Travis heard something. A story from a buddy who worked county maintenance, patching fences and clearing brush along these back roads. Said there was a wreck out here once years back. A silver sedan, Woman driving with her kids strapped in the back. Late at night, she swerved to miss a deer and went into the ditch. Nobody saw them for days. By the time someone did, it was too late. They said sometimes folks see the car still, just for a minute, just long enough to pull over. But by the time help arrives, it's always gone, like it was never there at all. They'd driven all day through the empty stretches of Texas highway, the kind of flat nowhere land that makes you feel like you've left the world behind. By the time they rolled into the little town, if you could even call it that, the sun had already bled out across the horizon, leaving nothing but a smear of red behind it like something wounded dragging itself into the dark. The motel wasn't much to look at. A sagging neon sign buzzed half-heartedly against the night, reading simply, "Rooms." No brand name, no chain affiliation. Just that word. The girl behind the counter looked tired, maybe 16 or 17, skin pale under the harsh light, her eyes flicking from the TV behind her to the couple standing there like she could barely be bothered. "Only got one left," she said. "Number 9. Take it or leave it." They took it. The room smelled faintly of mildew and something else, something sour under the chemical tang of cheap cleaner. The carpet was thin and threadbare, the kind of fabric that gave underfoot like damp sponge. The bedspread was a faded brown and patterned with stains shaped like continents on an old map. There was a TV bolted to the dresser, the kind that still had dials and a single yellow lamp casting. A sickly light across everything. They didn't care. They were too tired to care. They noticed the closet when they were unpacking. At first glance, nothing about it seemed odd. Just a door near the bathroom, painted the same peeling beige as the walls. But when he tried to open it, the handle didn't turn. Closer inspection showed a thick, rusted padlock looped through a latch at the top. The kind of lock you didn't put on a coat closet unless you really didn't want someone getting inside. "Weird," he said, rattling it a little. "Closet's locked." She shrugged. "It's probably where they keep extra linens or something. Who cares?" But it wasn't where they kept extra linens. The noises started around 2:m. Softet. First, like fabric brushing against wood, the shuffle of something moving in a tight space. He sat up in the dark, listening, his heart starting to tap faster in his chest. The room was silent otherwise. No cars passing by, no sounds from other rooms. Just that slow, deliberate scraping coming from behind the locked closet door. "You hear that?" he whispered. She was already awake, curled up with the covers pulled to her chin. "Yeah, I hear it." They listened together, not moving, not speaking. The sound came again, louder this time, not random. Not an old building settling or a pipe contracting in the cold. It was movement, deliberate. Slow dot, it went on for hours. Sometimes it stopped for long stretches, just long enough for them to start, thinking maybe it was over. They'd drift toward sleep, nerves unwinding just a little. And then, scritch, 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 something dragged across the inside of the door just beneath the latch. Sometimes they thought they heard breathing, slow and wet, like lungs struggling to pull air through something thick. At one point he got up, pressed his ear against the door. What he heard made him jerk back like he'd touched a hot stove, whispering, faint, dry words he couldn't quite make out but knew were meant for him. He didn't tell her. He just climbed back into bed and stared at the ceiling until morning. Started to bleed pale through the curtains dot at checkout. The girl behind the counter didn't look at them. Just slid the receipt across without lifting her eyes from her phone. He tried to make it sound casual. "Hey, weird question. What's with the padlocked closet in room 9? We kept hearing noises all night." Her fingers stopped moving on the screen. Slowly, she looked up at him, something flat and heavy settling into her expression. Room 9 doesn't have a closet. He almost laughed. Almost said, yeah, well, you might want to double check that. But something about the way she said it, quiet, certain, like someone stating a fact you'd be a fool to argue with, froze the words in his throat. Back in the car, she said, what did she mean? We both saw it. He didn't answer. Just pulled out onto the highway, watching the motel shrink smaller and smaller in the rearview mirror until it was gone. Neither of them ever spoke about it again. But sometimes, in the middle of the night, he swears he hears it, the slow scrape of something moving, locked away just out of sight. Waiting. Somewhere between Dallas and Houston, they realized they'd passed the same tree. Same mailbox, same dead armadillo, 5 times in a row. It was June. Humid as a fever dream, and the sun had long since boiled away behind thick clouds the color of dishwater. A storm had been threatening all afternoon but never quite arrived, hanging there like a drunk uncle who kept promising to leave but wouldn't. The road stretched ahead of them, I-45 south, empty except for the occasional 18-wheeler, roaring past with a blast of wind that made the little Corolla shudder like it was cold. Mel was driving. Tyler was in the passenger seat with the map crumpled in his lap, even though neither of them trusted it anymore. Neither of them trusted the GPS either, which had calmly insisted half an hour ago that they were still 25 miles north of Huntsville, despite signs that said otherwise. Mel's knuckles were pale against the steering wheel. That's it again, Tyler said, pointing out the window as they passed the leaning mailbox with its duct-taped red flag. Same tree, same goddamn roadkill. Mel didn't answer. She just pressed her lips together until they turned white at the edges and kept her foot steady on the gas. It's not possible, Tyler said, but his voice sounded weak, like he already didn't believe himself. We're not lost. You can't be lost on a straight highway. We are, Mel said. We've been lost since we got off for gas. We didn't get off for gas. She looked at him then, briefly. Yeah, we did. Tyler didn't remember that. Not even a little. He remembered the green sign for Centerville passing by, remembered talking about where they'd stop for dinner. He remembered the storm flashing in the distance and thinking, stupidly, that it made the clouds look like they were full of teeth. He didn't remember pulling off for gas, but now that she said it, he could almost imagine it. A dim little station, off a side road, peeling white paint, pumps older than either of them. A cashier behind scratched bulletproof glass who didn't look at them, not really. A single Coke in Mel's hand when she got back in the car, dripping with condensation. Remembering it now, aren't you? She said. Yeah, he said, but it felt like the memory had been slotted in after the fact, like a bad edit. The road curved. They passed the tree again, gnarled and leaning like it wanted to topple over the ditch. The mailbox. The flat, ruptured shape of the armadillo with its legs stiff as sticks. I'm gonna turn around, Mel said. They took the next exit, looping under the highway and coming up the other side. Northbound now. The GPS blinked once, twice, and then went dark entirely. Dead battery, Tyler muttered. But the phone had been at 80% 5 minutes ago. Look, Mel said. Northbound had the same tree, same mailbox, same crushed armadillo. Tyler felt something slip loose inside his chest, a little thread popping free in the weave of his heart. Okay. Maybe there's a loop in the road, a construction detour. They've been doing work out here forever, right? Sure. But neither of them believed it. They drove in silence. 10 miles, 20. The odometer turned over, slow and patient, but the road never changed. They saw the tree again. Tyler watched it this time as they approached, watched the way its shadow fell sideways across the cracked asphalt. The mailbox had black spray paint on its side, crude, Ugly letters smeared together. Stay out. Did it say that before? I don't know. The sky got darker, though the sun shouldn't have been down yet. The clouds weren't moving. Not west to east, not north to south. Just hanging there, sagging lower, like they were being pulled toward the earth by something underneath. We should turn off, Tyler said. There's gotta be a side road, a town, anything. Mel nodded. She took the next exit they found. No sign told them where it led. The ramp curved in a slow spiral down into thicker trees, branches clawing at the windshield. The road was narrower here. 2 lanes, no lights. The pavement cracked and buckled in places like it hadn't been driven in years. How far do you think this goes? Tyler asked. I don't know, Mel said. They drove. The trees pressed closer. The clouds pressed lower. The road kept going. Do you hear that? Tyler cocked his head. At first, he thought it was the hum of the tires on bad pavement, but it wasn't. It was softer, thinner, like whispering behind a door. He couldn't make out words, just breath sliding over breath, voices without mouths. I hear it, he sighed. Mel's hands tightened on the wheel. I don't know where this ends. Just keep going. We have to get out eventually. But the road didn't change. Trees, cracks, darkness. The dashboard clock blinked. 7:48. Then 7:48 again. And again. How long have we been out here? I don't know. His phone wouldn't turn on anymore. Hers lay on the console, black screen reflecting nothing. They passed something in the road. Not the armadillo this time, something larger. Sprawled across both lanes, pale and glistening. Tyler leaned forward to look. It was a deer, maybe. Except not a deer. Its ribs stuck through its hide like rebar through wet paper. Its head twisted back on its neck, eyes open, mouth split in a grin so wide it looked torn. Don't stop, Tyler said. I wasn't going to. They went around it. Or through it. It seemed to smear across the road behind them, pulled thin like taffy until it vanished. The road kept going. The whispers grew louder. Tyler thought he could almost make. Outwards now. Turn back. Go back. Wrong way. But when he tried to listen harder, they slipped through his head like smoke. Maybe we should turn around again, Tyler said. Mel didn't answer. They passed the mailbox. Same black letters, stay out, same tree, same flattened armadillo. Somehow, impossibly, they were back on the highway. But the highway wasn't the highway anymore. No other cars. No signs, no exits. Just asphalt stretching ahead into darkness, smooth and new like it had been laid just for them. Mel, Tyler said. Stop the car. I can't. What do you mean you can't? I mean it won't let me. Her foot pressed down, but the speed stayed steady. 55. Not faster, not slower. Like the road had chosen it for them. Okay, Tyler said, though nothing was okay. We'll figure this out. The clock still said 7:48. His mouth tasted like copper. They passed the mailbox. Mel, I see it. They passed the tree. The armadillo. Mel, I know. The whispers filled the car now. They were inside his head, under his skin. Not words anymore. Laughter. High and thin, like children hiding in the walls. I don't think this road ends, Tyler said. No. Mel said. I don't think it ever did. The sky peeled open. Not lightning, not thunder. Just a crack in the clouds, wide and jagged, something looking down through it with eyes too far apart, a mouth opening wider than the horizon. The road kept. Going. 7:48.7:48.7:48. Tyler stopped looking at the clock after that. They drove. And drove. And the last mile never ended.